Hello and good evening. What is up, guys? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. I'm Cole, and that is Jay, and this is the latest edition of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, the dimension where time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. So, this week we're coming in a bit late. We had a couple different things fall through for us.
We
This week.
did it though. We're here.
Yeah, but we are here. So this is our slap together show. But anyway, we weren't originally going to do the subject that is tonight, 12 Monkeys, but we're happy to do it, and that's what we wound up with. And yeah, we're a bit late. But this is a movie I know I've talked about probably in other episodes at least a little bit on live streams and things like the Sausage Factory and stuff like that. Because I'm a big fan of Terry Gilliam. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, and this film is probably. Well, I mean, it's pretty high up there as far as his films go. I mean, I like pretty much all his films, really, except for there's a couple. I still haven't seen the Zero Theorem,
That's
which
good.
I've heard is pretty good. And tying into this film, sometimes people, we've talked before about like thematic trilogies. Sometimes that it's considered that Brazil, 12 Monkeys, and the Zero Theorem form a sort of thematic trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess sort of about oppression of the future and stuff like that, and which is another big reason for that I wanted to see the Zero Theorem, and I can't really say why I didn't get around to seeing it. But anyway, yes, it's also probably among my favorite films of the 90s and of 1995. I think the only films of 95 I like more are Seven, and I think Whisper of the Heart's 95 too. But apart from that, 95 got a pretty good year. Yeah, some good stuff in there.
Yeah, I think this is my favorite Terry Gilliam film. It's like I just finished watching it again, and man, this is such a damn good movie. So entertaining, like start to finish.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a little different for his movies too because it's one he didn't write the script for.
Oh.
And I guess the producer wanted him right from the start, and they were a little concerned that maybe he wouldn't say yes because usually he only, at that point, would do projects that he wrote. But apparently he really liked the script, which was written by a pretty noted scriptwriter, David Peoples, who had contributed to the script of Blade Runner, amongst others. But if you know the story of Blade Runner, you know that went through various different scripts. But the David Peoples one is the closest to the version of the film that we see. And he's done some other fairly successful movies too. Take a quick look here. He did Unforgiven, for instance, which is a big movie. And he even did Lady Hawk have... Okay, no, I was mixing that up. Yeah, he did that weird fantasy movie Lady Hawk in the 80s. But for some reason I was confusing that title with something else because I think, oh, he did something else with I know what it was, Hudson Hawk. That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, he did another thing with Bruce Willis. And of course this film stars Bruce Willis. And it's a little different sort of role for him. It's actually my favorite thing that Bruce Willis has done. I mean, I guess the original Die Hard is hard to top. But as I've said many times, like Bruce Willis, it's kind of too bad what happens sometimes when you get sort of an iconic character in an iconic look is because Bruce Willis, he plays an iconic character in John McClane, and then for the rest of his career, he would often play just sort of different versions of John McClane throughout movies, and we're happy to see it. It's how it works with a lot of people. It's the same thing with like Stallone and people like that. But the truth is, Bruce Willis, unlike say somebody like Stallone or Schwarzenegger, is actually a pretty good actor who can play different parts and show a range of emotion. And this movie is a good example of that, where he's playing more of sort of an everyman, but also there's sorts of weirdness to it that goes in with it's not exactly that he's mentally ill, but a big part of this movie is sort of walking the line of what's real and what's not, and is this guy crazy or is he not, etc. And so you get to see Bruce Willis do some emoting and stuff that I'm not saying he hasn't done in any other movies, but still, he'd still created that sort of line for himself, where a lot of the movies he was just sort of the tough guy with some one-liners, and when we like seeing that, but and sort of like a lot what he did on that popular show Moonlighting, where people always found his character in this named Cole, actually it's his last name in this, so we're gonna say Cole a lot throughout this.
Finally got a character named Cole.
Yeah, he doesn't have any. He has no like jokes. He has no wry, observations or little quips to make. It's just not the character. And anyway, so it's a little bit different for him, but I like it a lot. And I was thinking, yeah, like it is a really awesome movie, but you think sometimes when we talk about some of these movies that we like so much and that have definitely stood the test of time, sometimes some of these movies, especially when you think about what this plot is and how the movie unfolds, you would think, oh, this could have been one of those movies that like didn't do very well at the box office and got a cult following and appreciation later on. But no, this movie was a big success right off the bat. It made well over $100 million. So it was critically praised and was popular with audiences too. And I think some of that has to do probably with the star power of Bruce Willis. This is 1995. Bruce Willis is like, absolute height of his fame.
Well, Brad Pitt too.
And Brad Pitt is gaining fame at this point. Like he's not quite at the top, but he's become a big.
I mean, he had just done Seven, right? Like earlier in '95. So I mean, Seven was a huge movie as well. And
oh yeah, that's right. Two of my favorite '95 movies both have Brad Pitt. Yeah, that's so that's true.
So I mean, he was definitely a rising star at that point. And Madeline Stowe, she's good.
Yeah, she's been around. I've seen her in things here and there. She's another sort of kind of refreshing casting choice in a way because she was like in her late 30s when this movie came out. They didn't try to put Bruce Willis opposite some 20-something that's kind of unbelievable that she's the doctor. And she's like 36, 37 years old, and it's completely believable that she's a psychiatrist and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes in those movies they're just
they have great chemistry together too in this film. Like she does a really good job acting as well.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting part to play because she has to spend most of the movie being her academic, rational self, fighting against the whole thing she's dedicated her career to, like delusion and mental illness, and then she has to slowly come to terms with the fact that there's actually something more going on here, and it's not just the diagnosis of a disturbed individual.
It was the bullet, right? When she got the call about the bullet being an antique. That's when she put it all together.
Yeah, there were other clues too, but that was sort of the big turning point because he'd said the thing about remembering when he was a kid, the story about the kid in the well, and that turned out to be a hoax. And she, at first, you can write that off to coincidence, but yeah, once you get to the bullet,
they sent a monkey down with a roast beef sandwich and tinfoil.
Sure. Well, I mean, the monkey is a motif that appears over and over again in the movie, so that one, I guess they couldn't resist, right? They're like, we got a well story. And before we get into it, when I was talking about its background, it's worth pointing out, that the script was by David Peoples, but it is based on a short film, a French film from the French New Wave, which you talked about before in the 60s, called Le Jetée, or if you wanted en anglais, The Jetty, which which is only a short film. It's about 28 minutes long, and it features a similar sort of setup, although obviously this is a 2-hour movie with a lot more going on in it, including the whole 12 Monkeys thing. But in the movie, which I haven't seen, but I've read about, Le Jetée, it's just, it's about, there's not necessarily a virus in that world. It's just more like living in a post-apocalyptic world. I think it's like after World War III happened or something, and people are living underground. And the idea here of the time travel isn't necessarily to like fix any one thing or stop any one thing. It's more like, hey, we mastered time travel. We can send people to different times, and that's kind of what our main characters in that. And the main thing that ties it into this movie that's used is the whole thing is the jetty is like a boardwalk or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what like the airport is in this. He has like this memory of being like a kid and seeing somebody die out on the jetty and there being a woman. And that's what's used here, except in this, instead of a jetty, it's an airport. And that, of course, has to do with things like predestination and destiny, etc.
And that's what inspired the script?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm going to have to go watch that. See if I can track that down.
Yeah, it's by Chris Marker, who's he done. It's a fairly artsy film, as you might imagine. I'm trying to think.
Sure.
I haven't seen anything by him, but in my readings about the French New Wave, his name has come up. But it probably is No, I see. Even though it's not a full feature-length film, it might still be the thing he's most known for, at least over here. But yeah, for a pretty interesting career from what I see, and made movies well into the 21st century. Is he still alive? Still alive. He's 91 now.
Oh wow.
Or no, he died in. Okay, yeah. He was 91. He died in 2012 at the age of 91. Okay, I read that wrong. But yeah, Legette was that's where the whole thing came from for 12 Monkeys was who is it? There's a producer. I got things going here. Hold on, I have it. Oh yeah, so one of the executive producers in the movies, his name is Robert Kosberg. He was a fan of the film, and he managed to get Marker to let him do a pitch to Universal about making a full length film about it. So that's where it came from. At the time, Gilliam was trying to do an adaptation of a Tale of Two Cities that fell through, and he abandoned that and signed on for 12 Monkeys. So kind of interesting. Once again, sort of tying. I don't think this was intentional, but somewhat tying into now. Yes, the movie is about a virus that that devastates mankind. Yeah. Of course, again, it's an extreme one. It's more like kind of like what we said, The Stand. Like 99% of the world's population is killed, and 1% that's left can't even go out in the air, and they all have to live underground. But
this wasn't intentional. We've actually been planning this show for a while, before the current situation.
Yeah, but the film is actually pretty lacking in detail beyond that, which I'm fine with because I don't think it's important. But if you're one of those people that really needs to like know more stuff, like you don't get good answers because it's like it's not understood how humanity is surviving underground. Like what's our food source? How are we eating? Things like that.
I know that's
they just aren't really addressed, and I guess it's fine.
That's what I was thinking about. I kind of like to see more of that world.
Well, maybe you do in the show, which I always meant to watch and still haven't gotten around to watching. But maybe the show does that. I would think.
Is it any good? I think I heard mixed things about it and just really never.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing here. Like I was really excited at the idea of it, and then since I never really get to things right when they start anyway, I think I had read some things too where people were kind of lukewarm on it. So yeah, I don't know.
It ran for 3 seasons, so
yeah.
It's one of those things like they just create shows on everything. Like there's a Mist TV show that I heard was that any good?
No,
that's what I heard.
I guess they're never getting a second season of that, even though the first season ends kind of on somewhat of a cliffhanger. Like it's definitely not an ending the way the first season ended. I watched it for one reason. I think I told you was that it was shot here in Nova Scotia. But it's completely unrecognizable because being the Mist, like the first episode has outside scenes. Then after that, like all the scenes are inside. So it doesn't matter where the hell it's shot because it's just indoors. And I did not recognize the community. It looked like a million communities around here, like a little place with a football field and a church. And, it looked like anywhere. That's the only reason I watched it. But it's not good. I would not recommend watching The Mist. It's not worth it.
I mean, there was a Minority Report show. I don't know if you ever heard about that. I mean,
I heard it. I forgot about it until you just reminded me now. I actually forgot that there was one.
I watched it, and I think it kind of was the same way. It ended like on a cliffhanger, but it didn't get renewed. So, kind of that's really that really pisses me off when that happens because you've invested so much time, and you don't even get a proper send off, a proper completion of the story.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about we'll have to do Minority Report sometime soon too because we both like that movie quite a bit.
Yeah, let's do that.
So that's something that we'll get to probably in the near future. But and back to this movie I was saying about like it being kind of skimpy on some of the details. The other thing is, okay, so it's the future. It's 2035. Mankind's been devastated. They're living underground. The other thing is, Cole, our main character, is some sort of prisoner. It's never explained exactly why he's a prisoner, if he's just a prisoner because this oppressive regime just imprisons people, or if he's like a legit criminal that they locked up for some crime. That's never spoken about either. All we know is they've got prisoners and they use them for stuff, and they use them to send them back in time. That's the same thing as in the original movie too. And they actually do, even though it's a short movie, from what I've read, they give a bit of explanation that it's actually really hard to find candidates to send back in time because like it has like a huge mental strain on people. Like
Right.
people have to have like kind of the right makeup for it to work. Like that's kind of hinted at in this movie, but they don't really talk about it.
Well, they say that he has a strong brain or strong mind or something.
Yeah.
Or that's what he says at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they also mention his, when they bring him in, they've got him, a guy on each side of him, and they tell him to let him loose. And he's like, he has a history of violence and, crazy behavior and stuff. So, I mean, maybe he is an actual criminal.
Yeah. So that's kind of left up to the imagination. You can fill in the blanks yourself there. So yeah, there's a few blanks that they just leave, which I think is okay. Like I don't think that it detracts from the movie. I don't think you're going to be like, wait, what? This whole thing's falling apart. So, but that is an interesting thing, like knowing sort of what sort of details to give him, what's okay to leave out, just depending upon what the main focus of the story is. Because sometimes, you have a story and you have a main focus, but sometimes if certain aspects aren't addressed, everything sort of falls apart and it's annoying. I think this film dodges that, where you're not necessarily questioning everything. But then again, the point of the movie is sort of like to question stuff anyway, right? Like a lot of it has to do with how people perceive reality. And again, one of my favorite themes, memory, because we got characters with implanted or false memories, and then we have, of course, Cole himself wondering how reliable his own memories are. So the movie opens with like that memory of being a kid and seeing somebody killed in what seemed to be an airport. But when that dream repeats a few times, sometimes some of the details are updated or changed. So it's one of the reasons why you can see some of the self-doubt he's going through.
Right.
I think that's another thing that makes him different from a lot of characters played by Bruce Willis, because Bruce Willis has played various characters that have their motivations and this and that, but this is a character that actually is carrying a lot of doubt and is carrying, there's times where he like, towards the end, like it's more he wants to just believe something else necessarily. I think like when he decides, I'll just go back, live in a better time with her, and tell her I am crazy because that's better. But there's parts where like it seems like maybe his psyche is kind of fractured at this point, where he's starting to really think, maybe really I am crazy, and this is all in my head,
Well, when they keep sending him back, who knows what kind of damage that does on his brain. So he's having trouble, determining what's reality and what's not, because he has these lucid dreams all the time. And I think he asked her a few times, "Is this a dream? Am I dreaming right now?" Or she's like, "No, it's very much real." Like I know he says that when the pimp comes in, because they're
that's right,
on his turf or something.
I didn't even know if he was a pimp. I just thought he was like the prime prostitute of that area.
Oh.
That's what I thought. I thought he was like the number one prostitute in the area, and he didn't like her muscling in on his business. But maybe he's a pimp. Yeah,
that's kind of what I figured. He has kind of a pimp vibe.
Yeah, it just seemed funnier to me that he is the prostitute himself.
It's funny.
He's mad that she's stealing his business. But yeah, there's actually I had a line too somewhere that Gilliam said about that whole thing about reality and stuff, because he said like it was one of the things that attracted him to wanting to do the movie in the first place. He was captivated by people's intriguing and intelligent. Oh, here it is. The story is disconcerting. It deals with time, madness, and a perception of what the world is or isn't. Is it a study of madness? A study of madness and dreams, of death and rebirth, set in a world coming apart. So yeah, all those cool aspects, yes, attracted him to it.
And I always love time travel films anyway, but this one's kind of unique in that it's like in the future, it's almost like they've taken a step backwards, like, except for the time travel aspect. Their technology is like, it seems like it's, maybe 100 years ago, like, because when he's drawing blood, the syringe looks like one of those old antique syringes, and, everything's like dark and dingy, and, it's not like what you imagine the future being, like nice, white, pristine, everything clean,
It's somewhat believable that technology might have stagnated under those conditions, though, right? Like they're trapped underground.
Right.
So yeah. Plus, you have to remember I think some of it has to do with Gilliam himself. this movie takes visual cues from Brazil.
Right.
It has a lot of that sort of aesthetic. It has that sort of somewhat futuristic, but also somewhat retro kind of a mix of things where it's like the future, but things are analog. You'll get, whenever you see the future stuff, it reminds you a lot of scenes in Brazil, particularly when he's being interviewed or whatever, or talked to by that council. It's a lot like Brazil, and you've got all these screens looking at things and all these things popping out, and it's very cluttered. Like that's definitely his visual aesthetic. So you can understand why it's employed in that way. But like you said, there's something logical to sort of back it up too, like the idea of like it is the future, but it's kind of a hampered future. It's not mankind being able to spread its wings. It's a mankind that's been severely diminished. So it's somewhat understandable that even though they're maybe more high tech, it's not like the streamlined, clean future that we might envision.
Yeah, it's almost like steampunky, You get like a steampunk vibe from it.
Very much so, which is one of the first things I liked about Brazil, because before I really even knew anything else about Brazil or all the other things that I love so much, it was, I was always a big fan of steampunk because of various video games and stuff that I experienced when I was young.
Did you ever play BioShock?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. Way into BioShock. The first and third one, particularly. Because the first one has that cool Art Deco type thing going for it. Because it's set in 1960, but it's about a world that was created, I think, in the late 40s into the 50s. Yeah, it has all that cool Art Deco style to it. And then the other one is set in 1912, so it's kind of like Industrial Revolution gone amok steampunk. So yeah. I like both. I like both those a lot. Yeah, they're very cool games. Actually, it's a rare first person shooter that I really like.
That's why I was surprised you had played it, because I know you don't care.
Because it stands out really to me from other first. It has such a great world and has a really cool trippy story. So yeah, big fans of those games for sure.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun.
And I'm probably even though I knew they were popular, I didn't know that much about them. The only reason I got into them was I remember just a few years ago. Or before I had a PS4, so more than a few years ago. But PS3, I don't remember if I just saw one really cheap or what, but I bought Infinite, the third one. I bought Infinite. I got it really cheap for some reason. I was like, wow, and it made me seek out the others. But yeah.
Oh, really, you started with the third one first?
I started with the third one first. I think I came across it for maybe $15 or something, and I was like, okay. And super impressed by it. So yeah, I actually played that one first. But the first one's also really creepy. One of the more scary sort of first-person shooters you play, like that. Those environment and the crazy enemies. Yeah,
all the plasmids and everything.
Yeah, they're really cool. Yeah, so this movie starts in 2035. The idea is sometime in 1996, this virus gets released, and through 96 and 97 absolutely decimates the world's population. And at one point, they're trying to send him back to 96, and they accident. And this is the other thing, the time travel is not very precise. They make mistakes with it all the time. He gets sent to 1990 first, which, of course, sets everything up really well. Because that's where he meets Brad Pitt. It's kind of weird what they decided to skip over, because just suddenly he's in this mental institution, and they just talk about what happened. We don't see him getting arrested or anything like that, but they just say, he tried to fight a bunch of cops or something. And again, it's kind of funny. It's 1990, but even in 1990, that's a weird-looking mental institution. It's pretty retro-looking, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Again, I think that speaks to Gilliam's sort of visual style that you do. Let's make this more of a retro, more of a first half of the 20th century type place. And it's a really good role for Brad Pitt too.
A great role, yeah.
Because he's not a hero or a bad guy. He's just sort of, but he moves events. And he's likable, but he's also not likable in some ways too, right?
Yeah.
Also, what I really praise about the script for this movie, but is that there's so many movies that have like people that are supposed to be like crazy or mentally ill, and I don't know, it always just comes off as like movie crazy, which is always a different thing. This, like, I really like Brad Pitt's dialogue in this.
Yeah.
To me, it's very authentic. It actually sounds like a person, a real person that has delusions and has like the stuff he chooses to rant and rave about it is so typical of that. Like he's railing against corporations and things, and I guess his extreme environmental views to a certain point too. But really, like the stuff about corporations and conspiracies, and because that's usually what you see with a lot of these people, is that they have this idea that like we don't know what's going on, but they've tapped into something that's really going on, and you see that a lot. And honestly, a lot of movies don't really do that. They just jump over it and go, "Oh, he's crazy," and they make him talk about pink elephants and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, no, like I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but it's not the main thing. This is a lot more authentic for people like with mental illness.
Yeah. I mean, say what you want about Brad Pitt. People tend to say he's like a pretty boy or whatever, but I mean, he is that character in this film. Like I can't think of anyone else doing it. They say Johnny Depp was almost cast as that character, but he nails it, man.
Yeah, he does.
Like this is when I really I'd already seen Seven at this point, but when I saw this film, I was like, this guy's a good actor, because I've always thought that since this film, because he does such a great job of looking like he's crazy, and those. Delivering those, monologues about whatever the corporate system and, whatever he's ranting about. And then he always, like, whenever he walks out of a room, double birds,
Yeah.
Whenever he talks to somebody, double birds.
Yeah, he really sells it. I had to think about something else about casting. Like, what was it? Gilliam was thinking about making Nick Nolte Cole. Ugh. I don't like Nick Nolte at all in anything ever. And Jeff Bridges. See, I could sort of see Jeff Bridges in the Brad Pitt role, but I like the Brad Pitt more. I mean, it's always easier to say because we've seen the movie. But
I thought Jeff Bridges was going to play Cole.
Nope. Bridges was going to play Goins.
Oh, I can't see that. I could see him playing Cole. I couldn't see him playing.
No, it was the original thing was Nolte as Cole, Bridges as Goins.
I do love Jeff Bridges though.
Yeah, I like him fine.
I mean, I like him when he's not doing his Rooster Cogburn impression. When he's like pre whatever that cowboy movie he made.
True Grit. I like True Grit.
I like True Grit too, but it seems like since he made True Grit, he plays the same character in every movie.
Oh, I hadn't really noticed. Or maybe I didn't see those ones. Because I was going to say, I don't like the Coen brothers, but I think that's a solid remake that they did.
Yeah.
The True Grit remake. Plus, I like the ending because it adds a little that's not in the original.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit of a sort of an epilogue there, which is kind of cool. Actually, I caught a bit of that on TV just the other day. But, no, I didn't know that he continued sort of doing characters like that. Doesn't surprise me because, I mean...
He does it well. He does it really well.
I'm a gruff, tough guy.
I know he plays basically the same character in one of those Kingsman movies, maybe the second one.
Oh, yeah, I never saw the second one.
Golden Compass or something like that. Golden something.
Yeah. Golden Circle?
Yeah.
I think it's Golden Circle.
It's good. I think they're both really good films.
I don't like I'm not going to, as I've said many times before, like, we define stupid in different ways, and there's lots of movies that I know are really stupid and I still enjoy. I just find Kingsman stupid in a way I can't enjoy.
Really?
I don't know.
I could see that. You really have to kind of suspend a lot of disbelief to get into something like that.
But I mean, I can for other movies, because like I said, there's lots of movies that have dumb things in them that I accept and I'm fine with, and I even kind of get a kick out of. I just can't explain it. It doesn't work for me in that.
I mean,
too dumb. That's what I think. Too dumb.
It's like James Bond on crack or something.
Yeah. Which they kind of try to point out over and over again through at least the first movie. They're like, it's like James Bond, but not. Yeah, okay, we get it. Because they're going on like, it's very, very British, but it's different.
We've got gadgets.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
is
yeah,
90.
that's right. Yeah, so he was on his big role here, Brad Pitt, because he did Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall in '94, and like you said, Seven in '95. So this is really establishing him as a big A-list star right at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care for Legends of the Fall, but Interview with the Vampire is okay. It's one I haven't seen in a long time. I need to go watch that again.
I blame Anne Rice for the ruination of vampires. Her dumb novels and that dumb movie. She's the one that was like, vampires need to be really, really sexy, and that's all they need to be. Nothing else. Just strip everything else away.
Is she who started that? Like
Yeah.
the sexy, all they want to do is, drink blood and fuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was writing those, like, in the late 70s into the 80s.
Mm.
And then they finally made a big movie out of one of them in the 90s. And everybody was excited about that just because it was Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise in the same movie. They're like, "Oh my god," which is fine. But no, I don't like the movie because I think the book is. I've read the Interview with the Vampire. I think it's trash. I really dislike Anne Rice.
I'll tell you what really sucks is that Queen of the Damned movie or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's called Queen of the Damned. I saw that.
It's got the soundtrack by like the guy from Korn. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like make it. Yeah, like the guy that plays Lestat. I don't remember who plays him, but when he sings, his singing voice is famous and stuff. And that had what's her name? She's dead.
Aaliyah.
Yeah, Aaliyah.
I think that's really what that film is known for, because she died like right after that was made.
Yeah, it's a terrible movie. I remember
it's bad.
My girlfriend at the time and it was her idea to rent it. She's like, I thought you'd like it. I was like, I guess we didn't have any long talks about what I think vampires should and shouldn't be. I guess we hadn't gotten to that point in our relationship where I explained to her what I thought vampires should and shouldn't be. Let
me tell you something really cool is that things we do in the shadows or what we do in the shadows.
Yeah.
They made a show out of that too, and that's a really good show.
I've heard that.
And if you haven't seen the movie, it's really good as well.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a really good comedy.
Speaking of another girlfriend, years later, actually, I did read some Anne Rice with her because if people don't know, Anne Rice, in addition to her trashy vampire novels, also wrote like straight up erotica. And she had like some erotic versions of fairy tales. And I remember my girlfriend and I were reading the erotic version of Sleeping Beauty, which had a lot of spanking in it, as I recall.
She's asleep, spanker.
Yeah, I don't remember. Not against spanking, but so I guess I can say I've somewhat enjoyed some Anne Rice, but that's only because of the circumstances. It's not because it was really good writing or anything. Although, it's always a weird tightrope to walk in, like erotica, because it's like it's either sexy or really stupid, or sometimes kind of both.
I think that's funny because didn't that what's the Mr. Gray, where it's all about the bondage and stuff.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey.
50 Shades of Grey. Like, didn't that start out as like Twilight?
It was Twilight fanfic, yeah.
Sexy fan fiction, yeah.
And we wouldn't have Twilight without the Anne Rice shit.
Right.
So that's another reason why I really blame her.
She's caused all this problem.
Mm-hmm. It all starts with Anne Rice. Gives you Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey. Which I saw the first movie just to see it. It's kind of funny because you expect something to be bad. It's almost like they just decided, like, it's going to be bad, so let's make, like, they weren't even like, okay, this is a really stupid book. It's, for, like, a bunch of middle-aged women to masturbate to or whatever. They weren't even like, let's try to make it better. They're like, nope, let's make it terrible just the way the book is terrible. Like, the acting in it is ridiculously terrible. Like, and you understand it because they have to say horrible, stupid dialogue, right? But they like, it's amazing how they just lean right into it. They're like, okay, this is the tone. This is what we're going for.
They've made more than one, haven't they?
It's been like 3. It's like
3, yeah.
What is it? It's like 50 Shades Darker and then something else. I didn't see the sequels. I don't think I'll put myself through that. But I did put myself through the first one, and that was painful enough. I mean, I knew it was going to be bad. I was just sort of curious.
I'm seeing here that Anne Rice was born Howard. Is she a transgendered person?
I don't think so.
Howard Allen Francis O'Brien.
I think her parents just gave her a weird name.
That's 2 male names. No, 3 male names. Howard Allen Francis.
I do not think that she's trans.
I mean, that's kind of an odd thing to do in 1941.
Yeah. No, they just gave her those names.
Huh. We want you to get made fun of.
I mean, it was probably because they wanted boys. Her father was a military man.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny is they had 4 daughters.
Damn it. That's usually what you see, people with a lot of kids. There'll be like 6 girls, and the last one is a boy, the youngest.
That'd be fun to grow up in.
Yeah.
Anyway, besides those other actors, I had a thing about Stowe, and I lost it. It doesn't really matter. Madeline Stowe. Oh, I had a little blip here. Not that it's important, but it was just that she was in a movie in '94 called Blink, which I've never seen. But apparently that was the main thing that made Gilliam want to cast her.
Oh, really?
But I've never seen Blink.
She was in a movie with Kevin Costner called like The Assassin or something like that. Assassins. And no, Revenge. I'm sorry.
I've seen her in some movies, but I don't really remember her because I've seen The Last of the Mohicans, but I don't really remember it. I've seen The General's Daughter. I don't remember, and I remember that movie, but I don't really remember her in it. So there's a couple movies that she's in that I've seen, but
she was in We Were Soldiers or something like that. Mel Gibson.
Yeah, I've never seen that, but yeah.
Vietnam.
She actually stopped acting shortly after that. She hasn't acted since 2003. Or at least in movies. She's done a few TV things. She's actually in an episode of the 12 Monkeys show.
I see that.
So that's kind of interesting. Oh man. She's in an episode of The Amazing Spider-Man. The 70s one.
Hmm.
The 70s live action one.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
So she would have been a child, I guess.
I mean, well, she would have been like in her early 20s. She was born in 50.
Oh, okay.
She's 62 now. Like I said, like she was actually age appropriate for this movie. As I said, I thought it was nice that they resisted that. Like instead of having like some like really hot like 25-year-old saying, "Yeah, here's your psychiatrist," she's actually a woman in her late 30s that looks like an established person that would actually have had a distinguished career. I mean, she's an attractive woman, but they weren't, going for some bombshell type thing. It wasn't like fucking. Now I can't think of anybody's name, so I can't do my reference. But I was going to talk about the James Bond film, The World Is Not Enough.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had like Denise Richards as like a nuclear physicist or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was bad.
Dr. Christmas Jones.
Oh, God.
Yep, she's a doctor. That's a pretty good movie, too. I just wish she wasn't in it.
Yeah, I guess like Wild Things. That's pretty much the only thing she was good in.
I've come around to that movie a little. I like it a little more. I used to hate it. Now, I'm okay with it, but I don't really.
You were into Nev Campbell. I thought you'd like it a little more.
I said I didn't like seeing Nev Campbell, those two putting their hands all over her. I didn't like that one bit. I'm very protective of Nev Campbell. Plus, yeah, she's like, her character is more sort of like known to be like slutty, and I don't like that either. I'm too used to her being the virginal Sydney from Scream. I get it. She's an actor. Let her act. Let her play parts. But some things are just programmed into you.
Nev, you're being typecast here. We gotta break out.
You gotta slut it up.
You gotta be a whore in this movie.
And yes, Kevin, it's that kind of movie, so you can show off your dick.
Yeah, I
We,
forgot he showed his dick off in that.
we know you like doing that in several of your movies, Kevin. You're very proud.
Speaking of nudity, we get to see Bruce Willis's ass at least twice.
And Brad Pitt's.
Oh,
Actually.
do we? Okay.
Remember, Brad Pitt at one point pulls his pants down in the mental institute. So that's some prime years Brad Pitt showing off his butt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's incentive for some people.
Bums aplenty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how they contrasted, him being scrubbed down in the future and then him being scrubbed down in the was that 90 or whatever year that was. That was nice the way they did that.
Yeah, so there's a few things like we said, like that. I mean, lends the idea of it like being him all being crazy or whatever is having some big similarities between the institutions, like how similar they are, even though they're supposed to be like one's in the far future and one's in the past. There's a few things where they make some direct parallels there, which again could lead some doubt to whether or not this is really happening. I guess so. But crap, I had something else I was going to bring up.
What you got to do, Jimbo?
Yeah. Plus, there's that guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's another thing that's not really explained or anything. Is like how like that guy keeps finding him, and is he finding him, or is it in his head, or what?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think he's crazy. I think.
Yeah, and they're deliberately ambiguous at one point, right? Where he gets strapped to the bed and he's locked up, and he starts talking to him. He's just like, "I'm in." He's like, "Where are you?" He's like, "I'm in the next cell over," but he can't see him. He's like, "Or am I in your head?" And I guess you might start questioning that if it happened to you.
Sure.
So the film takes place. The future is it starts in Philadelphia, then it goes to Baltimore, and then it goes back to Philadelphia. And actually, for the sake of, I guess, authenticity, the scenes are shot in those cities. So what we have here is they have some. So he's not sent back as like. So this isn't sort of a time travel movie where they're sending somebody, a lone man, back to be like a savior necessary to avert apocalypse. The idea is they send multiple people back, and they're called them observers. And the idea is they gather information so they can maybe figure some stuff out. So he's one of their observers, and his mission isn't to like stop anything or anything like that. It's just to find out what he can, because they've got these scraps of information that suggest a group called the Army of the 12 Monkeys was responsible for unleashing this virus, and they want him to find out whatever he can about that. And the movie's just great how everything ties together. You find out in 96 when he confronts Brad Pitt's character, and Brad Pitt disses himself from that. He's like, "You were the one with the idea. You were the one that's talked about the idea of taking like some of my father's work," because his father's like the weird virologist or whatever, and unleashing a virus on the world. So we have a few like self-fulfilling prophecies going on in this movie, and that's one of them. The idea that like Brad Pitt or whoever wouldn't have gotten the idea if he hadn't come and talked to him about it in the first place. Plus, they also, spoilers here, people, because we had to do full spoilers and going thing. They have like that garbled, recording of a woman talking about it, and you find out it turns out to be the doctor, and she's doing that. When she does it, she's saying it in jest, because at this point, this is where they found out, the 12 Monkeys didn't do anything, and yet she's creating a timeline where they believe that the 12 Monkeys are responsible. So, and that's the other cool thing, that like the big sort of twist about the movie, which makes it different from a lot of time travel movies, is that their information is wrong.
Right.
Everything turns out to be wrong.
Yeah, I love that the 12 Monkeys is just a huge red herring.
Yeah.
That that wasn't them at all. It was this other guy. But what they're trying to do is collect information to figure out exactly what happened, and then go and collect some of the virus before it started mutating. Right. So they can
study it and figure out how to make a cure.
I think they would just want to go back and stop the damn thing from happening. But what they're really trying to do is get a vaccine made, and then I guess they're going to bring that back, or I don't know what they're going to do with the vaccine. But
yeah, this seems, they don't come right out and say it like they do in some time travel movies, but this seems to be one of those time travel movies where the people that are like in control of the time travel or whatever, who invented it or use it, have the belief that you can't go back and change things. They seem to just be operating on that. It's like, you can't go back and change things, we cannot stop this from happening, but you can give us information that will help us here in the present. Like 99% of humanity is gone. We can't do anything about that. But if you can get some information from the past and come back to here, what we can do is, help make sure this 1% survives. Nobody actually says that. Because some movies, they come out and say it. They say, you actually can't change the past. You can even try, and it won't work. Like, they don't say that in this movie, but it seems to be they're operating under that sort of belief.
So this completely contradicts a movie like Back to the Future, because he's there. He's seeing his future self and his present self in the airport. And also, they can't change the past. That's what Back to the Future is all about, changing the past, right?
Back to the Future is hilarious because it's a movie that breaks its own rules in a lot of ways, and it should bother me, but they're such good movies that they don't bother me. It's especially hilarious when you hear about Doc lecturing Marty about the consequences of changing the past when he's doing it all the time himself.
Yeah. Well, it's the photo. I get it's a good visual cue, but that's kind of stupid, right? Like, wouldn't the photo would just not exist?
Yeah, exactly, right? It's full of flimsy things like that.
It's not like you're going to slowly disappear out of the photo, but
yeah, they disappear out of the photo. It's just like, none of us were born. So at some point, our parents, who never had us, just took a picture of empty space for some reason. Stuff like that. But, this movie has still some of those things in it, as we said, that shows up in so many things about, creating a loop. It's like, you go back in time, you have certain information in the future or your present. You go back in the past based on that information. Then you find out the only reason you have that information is because of something you did or affected in the past yourself in going back, and that's what happened. That's what's happened here. The whole thing about the recording. Yeah, it's his own interference. And again, it's a loop. He went back thinking there was stuff about 12 monkeys, and it turns out his interactions with the 12 monkeys is what led to the recording, which made them think about it. It goes on like that, and you see that in all sorts of things like that. And the third Harry Potter one, where he goes back in time just only a few hours in his past, but he he remembers that just when all the Dementors are about to kill him, and this is Harry Potter, him and Sirius. But then he sees across the lake some bright light comes in and chases them all away, and he doesn't know what it is. So that's when it happens. So then he goes back in time, and he's watching it happen, and he's like, okay, at any second now, someone's going to come in and save me. And then he realizes he saw himself, he saved himself. Right. That happens a lot in these sorts of movies, right?
Yeah. Hell, it's all theoretical, so who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It would make sense to me that if you went back and fucked with a lot of stuff, like go back and step on a butterfly.
Yeah, that butterfly effect.
Yeah.
So we did another movie all about time travel called Primer a year or so ago, and that one I just couldn't follow. I was lost with that movie because that movie didn't necessarily involve going back far. It involved really short time travel, and it wasn't creating parallel timelines. It was just creating more versions of yourself running around in the same timeline. So, again, it's all theoretical. There's no right or wrong for that. But that's not what I'm used to. But here's another thing that, as much as Back to the Future is kind of sloppy about time travel, one thing that I like about it is that it points out that a time machine travels in time, not in space. And yet in this one, he travels in space all the time. And it's never explained. They're in Philadelphia, and they just zap him back, not just to the past, but to Baltimore. At one point, they send him to somewhere in France during World War I. He's on the Western Front, right? Not only did they get the time wrong, but they sent him to fucking France, and that's never talked about or explained, right? So he doesn't just jump around in time; he jumps around in space too. Yeah, so that's another thing, a weird thing that popped. But I love all the layers, and I know you do too, that pop up in this movie. So yeah, at one point he overshoots, and he's in France. He runs into another guy that he knows who was also shot back there, to the point where there's actually historical evidence that the doctor's talking about later on in the 90s, right? Saying there's this incident where a guy we thought was a French soldier, because they have no documentation of him. So it's a French soldier who had an injury and suddenly couldn't speak or understand French anymore, but spoke English. Well, no, it was a displaced American time traveler. And then you see in the photo, looking on him, you see the naked, displaced Bruce Willis, Cole. And that's the thing that really ties it together, because there's photographic evidence.
That was the same guy that came back at the end and gave him the gun, right?
Yeah.
Juan or...
I probably didn't know that the first 1 or 2 times I watched the movie.
Well, I only say that because he had some like weird scar on his face. I kind of assumed it maybe from that incident.
Yeah.
Weird. Really...
That's another part where like it gets a little blurry what the movie wants from him, because as we've established, they don't necessarily think he can stop anything or do anything like that. He says like this isn't about like fixing the timeline or the mission. This is about like punishing me for disobeying them, and they want me to like get back in line. Because you are thinking, yeah, now we know what the real cause of the outbreak is. It's the assistant to Brad Pitt's father. Oh, by the way, played by Peter. No, not Peter. Hold on. Oh, for God's sakes, Canadian actor Christopher Plummer.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Christopher Plummer's. Anyway, it's Christopher Plummer's assistant that does the whole thing. And again, we have no idea what his motivation is, but he steals the virus and goes on a world tour with it to unleash it. Now, what do you think the ending means then? When that woman who's from the future sits down next to him and says she's insurance, does that mean she's going to stop him? Or does that just mean she's just going to get a sample and take it?
That's what I thought. She was going to get a sample.
But it seems like they never in the wildest dreams thought they could actually stop it, so they weren't even going to try. But now they find out they can do it. Because there's the other thing about time travel, right? Is like it doesn't matter that they made a bunch of mistakes. They can keep going back till they get it right. It doesn't matter that they had the wrong information. Once they have the right information, they can act on it. So I assume that's why suddenly she's there, because they could insert her in. They're like, oh, okay, now we know.
So you think they sent the other guy back to give Cole the gun, knowing full well Cole wouldn't be able to stop the guy.
Yeah, I think they were just setting Cole up. They wanted to punish him.
Okay, so the whole thing about the full pardon was bullshit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, you don't have to necessarily believe that, but I think it was bullshit. And that ties into the original movie too, where again, I haven't seen it, just based on stuff I read. Like when he gets back supposedly from completing his mission, he becomes convinced that they mean to do away with him. And he escapes back to the past again, only to do the jetty scene where he sees his young self, and his young self sees him getting killed by one of the agents they sent after him. So that's a little different. In the original film, Legette, he's actually killed by another agent from the future sent after him. Where in this, he's just gunned down by cops because he's brandishing a gun in a airport. Yeah, Christopher Plummer, awesome actor, is the father.
It's really interesting, and it leaves a lot up to your own beliefs or interpretations or whatever. But I mean, you would think that they would be okay pardoning him because he gave them all the information they needed. He's the one who cracked the code.
Yeah,
but they're so like upset with him, pulling out his teeth and being disobedient that
right, because the tracker, right?
Yeah,
the tracker was in the teeth.
It coked up bitch and this crazy dentist.
Yeah, there's not a ton of humor in the movie besides the crazy stuff, but that's a good line.
One of the parts I like that's really funny is when he comes back and they're singing Blueberry Hill, the scientist.
Yeah, like we hear you like music.
That's like very Gilliam-esque.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I like, as we said, I like those aspects of his character. Like he's genuinely, he seems obviously genuinely crazy to this woman, but then like he's crazy in a way that makes you sort of doubt, like maybe believe him, because he's talking about like how like he's never heard music. It's like we don't have music and stuff. Like he's so obsessed with hearing the radio, and he doesn't even understand what like a commercial is. And by the way, the commercial he hears is for Key West, which is where they decide to go. There's a few things that repeat in the movie. Key West being another one, because
I've never been to the beach.
Yeah. As much as they do have good chemistry, I don't know. I never really understood like why she falls in love with him. I understand why he falls in love with her, because, well, he's from this awful world where he's a prisoner and everything sucks, and now he's in a much better world, and here's a fairly attractive woman, intelligent and everything. So why wouldn't he just fall for her? But why does she fall in love with him?
I think she kind of had feelings for him even before she found out he wasn't crazy.
Yeah, yeah, she did. I'm
She
pretty
had
sure.
like a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, after the kidnapping.
Yeah, which the cops like accuse her of, right?
Yeah,
They're like, "Oh, it's your friend, the kidnapper."
but
But
it's funny because she calls it out. She's a psychiatrist and knows exactly what they're talking about. But no, I
yeah,
don't have that.
no. Yeah, I never really got why. Like, yeah, like because in his head, his plan is okay. Everything's over now. I'm not going to report back to my time. I'm just going to live with her, and we're going to get away. I'm going to live in this nicer time, and that's all I want. And it seems like a good plan from his angle, but it's like, why would she go along with that? But she's totally willing to go along with it. She's like, yes, okay, let's take this pimp's money and we'll buy some stuff and wigs and stuff and we'll get some tickets and we'll go to Key West. Like, she's all ready for it. Like, she has like a really good career and everything. She's giving lectures and stuff. She's respected in her field. She must have family and friends, but she's like, yeah, I'll go off with this deranged, crazy guy that has held me hostage a few times, and I personally witnessed kill several people.
He's saying, the world's about to end anyway. So maybe, she's believed, some of the other stuff he said came true. Maybe she thinks the world's going to end. And,
she seems awfully happy about it, though. She almost seems to like think like they have like this great future, right? They almost seem like giddy and excited. We're going to run away together. Like, I don't know. It's a bit confusing to me, but it's just that Bruce Willis charm. Even when Bruce Willis isn't playing Bruce Willis, he still has a little bit of that Bruce Willis charm, I guess.
Because when she took the bullet out of his leg, I almost felt like they were about to kiss right there before he grabs her and does whatever he does to her, because the scene ends and it moves forward.
At one point, they try to fake you out that he killed her, although you're never going to believe that, right? Because there's a part where after he's abandoned her and he's run off to the party, this is 96, when he's run off to the party that's Christopher Plummer's throwing that has Brad Pitt there. Because an important detail, I guess, to let the audience know is that, yes, in 1990, Brad Pitt's character is in an asylum. He's got a lot of, mental problems and stuff. And one of the big things he does is, because he's like a big activist and environmentalist, is he directly opposes the work of his father because they do stuff like animal testing. But by 1996, not only is he out, but he's done this whole thing where he's fooling his father, where he's pretending to go along with everything, right? Where like he calls out the rest of the friends and says like, no, my father does important work. I'm on his side now, but it's all a big fake out. So Brad Pitt is fairly functional when he wants to be, right?
That's what I was going to ask you. If you thought that maybe he wouldn't have gone through with it if Cole hadn't come back to the party and, said, I'm here about some monkeys.
No, I think he was planning it all along.
He's going to do it anyway. Okay.
Well, because when he's talking to the group, they don't seem at all surprised he's back. Then again, how could they be surprised by anything he does? So, like, he gives that speech and then he runs off. And he's like, he's legitimately crazy. You guys know that, right? And it's like, well, yeah. But they still like working with him. Which I understand. He probably helped fund it. He's rich.
Right.
Help fund their exploits. The Army of the 12 Monkeys. It was us. And that's the other thing. So, yeah, there's a big animal theme. Although when you think they're pretty shitty for... And it's weird because, okay, so when they first meet that group, when Cole and Raleigh meet them, and they talk about how Goines has distanced himself from them and is now supposedly on his father's side. I think they believe it at that point because I don't think he shared his full plans with them.
Right.
But wait a second. There's something they say. Shit, I had something. Hold on.
Well, he talked shit about them. I forget the exact insults he used, but basically called them, like unintelligent,
right,
fake animal lovers.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you're a bunch of liberal something ineffectual. But yeah, okay. So they're saying like, but it got to a point, where his craziness was too much for them, right? Like. And they said, we kept trying to tell them, like, stuff like that's counterproductive, right?
Right.
So they sound like they have a head on their shoulders. And yet they're all for this plan of just releasing a bunch of animals from the zoo. How is that productive? Anything, if you're an animal lover, that's not good for the animals. That's putting the animals at risk. If you release a bunch of wild, exotic animals from a zoo, there's a good chance those animals will get hurt or even killed. Like, that's not helping them.
It's a statement, man.
I know, but I mean, it just seems like, but some of them seem to be more reasonable, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you'd be like, okay, I care about tigers, but you know what doesn't help a tiger in a zoo? Just setting it loose in a city. That's not helping the tiger. He's not going to return to his, natural habitat because it's not here.
The concrete jungle.
Yeah, somebody's going to fucking shoot him.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely going to be, I mean, if they can't shrink him, they're definitely going to kill him.
Yeah, so.
I mean, that's, best case scenario is.
And yet they're also enthusiastic about it. It's like, yeah, liberate the animals, man. I was like, I thought you guys were smarter. You were talking about like how his more crazy stuff was, wasn't actually helpful and counterproductive. And yet they're all for this, which is totally counterproductive. And yet they're so proud of it. They have that. It was us all over the place.
Yeah.
Hence the confusion about who released the virus, thinking this army of the 12 monkeys did it.
So they freed the animals and they put his dad in a cage, like in one of the cages.
Yeah. It's, again, part of their big statement.
Animals don't belong in cages, man.
Yeah. But, I mean, it does have a nice effect, though, towards the end, where they're trying to get to the airport, and they hear the news about it, and you see some of the animals running around in the city. It does look pretty cool. You see the flamingos flying, you see the giraffes and the lions, which ties in, again, to the opening of the movie, where it shows him going up to the surface in the weird protective suit, and he gets attacked by like a bear, and sees a lion roaming around, because that's the thing, right? It's like humankind is underground, but the virus doesn't affect animals, so the animals have like retaken the earth.
Yeah, and apparently learned how to adapt to a pretty harsh climate for an African lion to be living in New York City
or Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia, that's right.
Not much of a difference. Same climate and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going from a desert to it gets pretty cold. I don't know.
Lions used to live as far north as Greece.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Makes me sad when I think about the range certain animals used to have that they don't have anymore. I think it would be awesome to live in, even though it doesn't affect me at all. I still think I'd be in a better world if lions still lived in Greece. I think that would be better. And and of course, all over North America, like wolves have been eradicated all over the place, and that makes me sad too. Because there used to be wolves in like every part of North America. Now they're only in some. I understand why, but it's still sad.
Yeah, what is that? Habitat loss or being killed?
It's a combination for that, because as we talked about before, your habitat loss is the number one cause of most species dying out or taking a hit to their population. But in the case of wolves were very aggressively hunted, ever since Europeans arrived in North America, right up into like the 20th century, because wolves would attack livestock and things like that.
Well, I guess wolves and bears, they were the apex predators in North America, right?
Yeah.
And I guess maybe some big cats in some places, cougars and panthers.
Yep.
But they're almost extinct as well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like the jaguar, also used to be as far north as like northern Mexico.
Really? Wow.
Now, I don't think there's any jaguars in Mexico. I think you have to go down to at least Central America to get jaguars, and they're mostly in South America. But yeah, a lot of these animals had much further ranges, centuries ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I follow the Florida wildlife pretty closely, and they have trackers on pretty much all the wild, mountain lions, whatever you call them, cougars there. And they normally, like when they get killed, they're usually hit by cars. So they monitor the wild population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting wildlife in Florida.
Yeah, a lot of interesting non-native wildlife.
Yeah, the only western crocodile in the world is in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
They're rare as hell too.
I didn't even know that until recently that we had American crocodiles.
Oh no, I used to get back when I was a kid, I used to always read magazines and things on that. But there was a while where I don't remember. It was something I subscribed to. It wasn't like even like a full magazine, but I used to get like a weird sort of pamphlet thing like every month that had thing. And I remember I had a thing that talked about the crocodiles and alligators in Florida, because that's the other thing, because it's also the only place in the world where crocodiles and alligators share an environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always interested in that because they're so similar, but they have their differences.
There may be some caiman there as well. I mean, there's a few crocodilians.
Yeah,
that live in Florida. I mean, that were native, not before all the craziness that's gone on recently. Like they've got those fucking lionfish everywhere and cane toads and rock pythons everywhere.
yeah. I'll use it again to plug my favorite documentary, not kidding, of all time, is cane toads. That's the best documentary I've ever seen in my entire life.
That is good. I watched it too after you talked about it.
Which was about cane toads being an invasive species in Australia in the 80s. Well, I think they were first transported in the 60s, but the documentary was made in the 80s. By the time it became a huge problem, where they were just devastating wildlife and the ecosystem.
Because animals that frogs are a part of their diet. They eat the cane toad and they die.
Yeah.
So and they breed like crazy. They have no natural predators.
Mm-hmm.
But that's Australia for you.
Yeah, I love everything in that. Like, it's a serious documentary, but so much of it is so funny. I love the bit with like the 4-year-old girl that has one as a pet. It's like this ugly monstrosity, and I like she's talking. I like how she's talking. She calls it Dairy Queen. That was one of the names. She goes, sometimes I call him Runny, and sometimes I call him Runny, and sometimes I call him Dairy Queen. I love like when one of the scientists or whatever is trying to explain like why like children would like them too, and at one point he says something like how they have like an attractive gait. It's like, really? That's what people like about it. It has a great gait to it. Like, it hops. It's a fucking frog. Like, I don't know. You would say something that hops has a gait. Isn't a gait more like a walking thing? Well, I don't know. But yeah, that's the best. I love that.
Where are the frogs that you can apparently trip if you like lick their back or whatever? Where are those?
Places like islands in the Pacific. Places like that.
That sounds interesting.
There's probably a few in like places like South America and Southeast Asia too, but the trade-off there is some of them are also super poisonous and they'll kill you if you do that, right?
It's like mushrooms.
Yeah.
These are really great, but they also look exactly like these over here that'll kill you.
Yeah. The gold ones in South America are literally called poison dart frogs because that's what the natives did. They used their poison to tip their darts.
And it's the ants that they eat is what makes them poisonous.
Oh, cool.
Because when you bring them into captivity, they're pretty popular for hobbyists to keep.
Well, they're so bright and colorful, right? Yeah. They're some of the most colorful animals you can see.
But yeah, they're not poisonous or anything, in captivity. So,
it's interesting. Yeah, so this movie, of course, has all sorts of animal themes running through it, which again makes it a little bit different from the short story or short film it's based on.
Yeah, I love the hog's head picture that you see a few times before you realize that it's at the 12 Monkeys like headquarters.
Yeah.
Above their little, what is that? Some sort of like a hippie record shop or something that they're working in, like some sort of
some sort of hippie place. I don't even know what the hell they were selling, but yeah, they had like recordings of animals and stuff.
Yeah.
That was the front for their little headquarters.
Which is, a huge, prime real estate right there on the corner. You can only imagine he's paying the rent or his dad's paying the rent.
Yeah. But speaking of telling the future, this is just a coincidence that I know. This is I've watched this movie many times, but for the first time, I watched this movie today, and there's the part where when Cole takes Rowley into the city when they're trying to find them, and remember they get attacked by like the homeless people and stuff, and he has to fight them off, and he like kills one of them. She says something. She says like, you killed them, or what have you done? And he says, all I see is dead people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Which is kind of like how in a few years he would be in that movie The Sixth Sense, where the kid says to him, I see dead people, which is one of the most like popular phrases for some reason.
I caught that too, and I was like, wait, no, this came out before. So yeah.
Came up before. He says, all I see is dead people. I think what Ellie's just trying to say is like, I didn't murder them, they're dead. I don't know. Some sort of like weird, crazy rationalization, because she's like, well, you murdered them. It's like, well,
be dead anyway.
He did try to violently rape you, but yeah, I guess it's bad that he's dead.
Yeah, she's constantly trying to keep him from killing people, because apparently he's just like a savage brute. He's able to just murder everyone with a few blows to the head.
Yeah. But she also doesn't want him to get killed.
Yeah.
Which is what winds up happening tragically.
I don't like that they beat you over the head with that's him as a kid. I feel like they really played that a little bit too much. Like, we got it. Like, there's even one point where the mom's like, come along, James. You know, it's like, we know that's fucking him, you know? You don't have to tell us 12 times. I mean,
that's true.
You know? And
apparently, I'm a little confused by what happens there, too. Because, okay, so at some point in his childhood, his parents take him to the airport because I guess they're going to travel, because that's why you go to the airport, right? But then they see a man get gunned down by the cops. So then they just go home? Because they don't get on a plane. They go back out to their car in the parking lot and leave. Is it like the flight's canceled because of this crime happening? Like, I didn't really understand that. They're like, well, we can't go on a plane now. We have to take our son to therapy.
We decided not to go on our holiday.
Not a huge deal, but I was just thinking, they weren't there to meet somebody. They were clearly there to travel. Like, he was talking about how he wanted to see the planes and stuff. So like, well, you know, I guess this is enough excitement. Trip is postponed until...
Maybe they were picking up a family member or something. I don't know. I guess there could be other reasons you'd be at the airport.
Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, I just figured they were going on a trip. But then again, maybe we don't really see them with luggage, do we?
They were just there to get lunch.
Nobody makes better food than that diner at the airport. Yeah, it's a great family outing. Let's go to the airport and get some hot dogs.
I don't know. People do dumb shit sometimes. Let's go, eat and watch the planes take off or something. I could see somebody doing that.
True. Well, I got a line here from Gilliam talking about like the thing with all the screens. You try to see the faces on the screens in front of you, but the real faces and voices are down there, and you have to have these tiny voices in your ear. To me, that's the world we live in. The way we communicate these days through technical devices that pretend to be a communication, but may not be. Because, that's another thing that sort of comes through in Brazil, right? It's like how, like, even though we have, like, better technology and these ways to communicate, in some ways it just gets in the way of, like, real human interaction and real human understanding. And plus, in this movie, you have the added layer of separated eras. No more monkey business.
Oh, yeah. Come on, guys, stop monkeying around.
I don't think I noticed this when I'm reading a part where it says, like, they had a rap sheet listing some of his offenses, like where he was a prisoner, and they said antisocial sex was an offense. Does that mean he's a rapist? Of course, antisocial sex could be a very different term in their weird future society, right? It could just mean free love. Who knows?
Maybe he masturbated in a room with another person.
Very, very possible.
So I don't imagine they have a lot of human-to-human contact, or they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
That's funny. What else did it say for his offenses?
I don't have the thing. This is just the thing making the point about that one. So I don't know. I'll have to look for that somewhere. What's funny is, like, we talk about, like, with airport stuff, we talk about, like, post 9/11, and it is true. Like, the security you see for a 1990 airport is accurate. Or 90s airport. Like today, Peters, that's the assistant, he would have gotten the vials past them these days.
Oh, right. It's like, look, they don't even have a smell. That's not necessary, sir.
Yeah. In a post 9/11 Patriot Act world, a virologist with top level clearance just suddenly deciding to take a trip around the globe would have the FBI would have totally been onto that. Definitely would have put up some red flags. And that's the other thing. Remember, and this is another thing that happens too. It's so even though nobody believes Rowley and him when he's in the airport, when she's screaming "Stop that man!" blah blah blah. No matter how nowadays, no matter how crazy that might sound, they would still take it seriously.
Oh yeah. Oh, they would take anything seriously these days. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could scream anything just to stop somebody, and they will have to do it. You'd be like, he's got a bomb in his underwear or whatever. They'd have to. They would. Even if you sounded like a lunatic, they would still stop the guy. But they're just crazy ladies yelling.
He's got a gun in his stomach, or you could say just the most bizarre shit, and people would listen to you.
Yeah.
Because, that kind of stuff has happened before. Like the guy with the bombs in his shoes, the shoe bombs.
Yeah. Also, the fact that they bought disguises is completely pointless for the airport because you need photo ID at an airport. But
yeah, it was very lax. Her buying those tickets under the fake name and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't do that anymore.
I'd love to just go to an airport and buy some tickets to Maui, and they'd be like, name, and I'd be like, Joe Joferson, and they'd be like, okay, I take your word for it. Yeah. Have a nice vacation, Mr. Joferson.
Yeah.
Can I check your bag? No, I like to keep my cocaine close, thanks. I mean, my bag. So yeah, that's the other problem with I guess how they, at least unless they again go back and do it again, because like I said, in the future they have multiple chances. But from what we saw, Peter still gets onto the plane, but they have an agent there, the insurance, and she could take him out or take the thing. But at that point, he's already exposed people in Philadelphia to the virus when he opened the fucking thing. So even if they stop him from going on his world tour, there's still an outbreak starting in Philadelphia. So, which could still spread, just spread slower.
Mm-hmm. I found a copy of Legit on. I'm gonna share the link.
Oh, cool! Yeah, I would like to see it.
That's what I've been trying to do here, so I'm not talking. Sylvester Stallone was considered the role of James Cole.
Yeah.
Yo.
Luckily, he passed on it to do Judge Dredd.
I love Judge Dredd, man. I know it's a stupid movie, but it's so bad it's good to me.
Oh yeah, I enjoy it too. It's a terrible adaptation, and just because you have this marketable star, he always has the helmet off.
Right.
That's one of the things that's so refreshing about the newer Judge Dredd movie, which is a really good movie, is he keeps the helmet on the whole fucking time because that's the character. But they're like, we can't do that. This is A-list Stallone, And I love how everybody says the law in that movie. I think I said this before, but when I went to see Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, I've had one of the most strongest urges to stand up and yell in a theater my entire life. Because there's a part early in that movie, Sylvester Stallone is in the movie, where he's part of that weird group of pirates that the blue guy is part of. I don't know how well you remember that stuff, but how they're all and he's one of the leaders, and he's chewing the blue guy out. I don't know why I can't remember his name. I'm good at Marvel characters.
Yando or some shit like that. He's got a crazy name.
Yeah, Yando, something like that. And he's chewing him out for going against their code or something like that. And at one point he goes, "You betrayed the code!" And I wanted to stand up and go, "You betrayed the law!" But I should have, but I didn't. Nobody there would have fucking gotten it. But I was like, it can't be a coincidence they gave him that line for him to like scream passionately, "You betrayed the code." It's too close, and I wanted to acknowledge that, but I just sat and kept it inside.
Yeah, I can see James Gunn totally doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
That rapist James Gunn.
Oh, by the way, the other thing about this
It's a joke, by the way.
Yeah, this original Le Jeté is that while it's technically a movie, it's all still images.
Oh, really?
That's
interesting.
Yeah. So, as I said, it was a very artsy, experimental type of film. I don't even know how the audio works on it, if there's dialogue going over it or what. Yeah, so the implication is that, like, if a time traveler is used too many times, he just goes insane. So that's the other thing that, like, Cole is dealing with, right? Like, where he starts to think, maybe I am insane. Except the weird part about that is, like, well, if all the time travel is what's causing you to be insane, well, then that doesn't really... that flies in the face of your idea that, like, maybe I'm just so insane I made up the time travel. Well, no. But I get, if you feel your psyche breaking, you're not going to really be able to make those distinctions, you know.
I kind of thought that, you know, the voice he keeps hearing in his head, assuming that is an actual guy, I kind of thought that guy had maybe gone too many times and kind of...
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, he does encounter him physically a few times. Mm-hmm. We do see him. But yeah, he's definitely
the homeless guy, right? Or the whatever street person, whatever you...
Well, that's when he approaches him one time, but I mean, it's the same voice as the one that, like, talks to him in the insane asylum in 1990. That's the other thing. Like, how is this guy, like, going everywhere he's going? Not just where, but time-wise too. But it's not explained. But I guess that's supposed to add to the ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. There's probably other time travel movies that do this, but I like the idea that, like, time travel is really unreliable and it's really unprecise, and
right.
And also that it, like, breaks people mentally. Like, I'm sure that's done in other forms of fiction, but I like it a lot in this movie because sometimes in a lot of time travel movies, it's, like, so neat and tidy and everything works out so well. I mean, they have, like, some weird rules in Terminator, things like you can only go one way and you can't take anything. You have to go naked and stuff like that. I mean, those just seem arbitrary to me. I don't mind them, but they're not really cool or interesting.
No, I mean, it you know, you can kind of see how that would possibly make sense, you know, I guess.
I don't know. But as we said, you know, whenever you're doing some sort of time travel movie, you usually have to establish some sort of rules. It's like, here's the rules for how this time travel works. What I like about this one is, like, the rules are not very clearly defined, and it's more like because they don't even really know what they're doing. It's more like they, like, figured out time travel by accident. What's funny is, like, a movie that's not that great, but I still really like. I like Time Cop. Time Cop handles time travel pretty well.
I like Time Cop a lot.
And it's also in the same vein of time travel being unreliable, because in Time Cop, we're presented with a society that had discovered, oh my God, time travel's possible. And they very quickly realize that it has no practical applications. And the only thing they can do is try to police it, because all people are going to do is use it and use it. There's, like, no way anybody can use it to benefit mankind in any way. It's like, we just have to police this shit because people are going nuts breaking all the rules. I love how it opens. It opens with, like, what? Some, like, future guy, like, robbing some guy, like, Civil War era guys of their gold with his, like, crazy guns. Like, damn it, you can't do that. You're making a blip in history. Like, I don't care. I want us to be rich. But yeah, so I've always liked that approach of Time Cop, because most of them, it's usually like, look at the wonder of time travel. And this is like, time travel's a fucking pain in the ass. We have to, like, create a whole system just to police it. And it also gives good motivation for Jean-Claude Van Damme's character too, because he has this tragic backstory where his wife is, like, killed, and the whole thing is like, I'm not allowed to go back and save her, so I'm not going to let some fucking asshole go back just so he can steal money and get rich.
And that has probably the best Jean-Claude Van Damme splits.
Oh yeah, the one where the floor gets electrified. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that like for the first time as a kid, like in a room with like several women that were like, "Woo!" Because I saw that at Ryan's house, where like a few of his female relatives watched with us. I can't remember why. It's not a usual thing, but it was that time. But didn't they even make a show of that? Speaking of time travel show, I think they made a Time Cop show.
Probably so. They did. I know they did a few sequels.
Yeah, I never saw the sequels because they didn't have him. They had different people.
It was an Asian guy that. I mean, the sequels are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it started out as just a three. It was just a limited series. It was a Dark Horse comic.
Oh, really? It started as a comic.
Yeah, it's called Time Cop: A Man Out of Time. I don't know. It might have been really different. It was just it wasn't even like a series. It was like an anthology comic. So it just sort of, I never read it, but from my understanding was it just told like several disconnected stories set in that world. It wasn't like one main story. But yeah. There's a Super Nintendo game that I know I played, but I don't remember it at all. I guess probably because it was probably just a side scroller where you shot stuff. Time Cop 2, The Berlin Decision.
Mm-hmm. It's
Jason Scott Lee.
Yeah, I thought it was the same guy that was in like Dragon, the Bruce Lee story and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a TV series.
No way it was any good. I don't think I ever heard anything about it.
It aired in 97. 13 episodes were ordered, only 9 aired. So it lasted for 9 things. Actors I've never heard of, although it did have a guest spot by Ron Livingston. I know him. You know who he played in it? Elliot Ness. They did it. Yeah, so they had various guest stars playing various, obviously, historical figures. So we have Elliot Ness, Al Capone, obviously, because Elliot Ness was after Al Capone. Somebody played H.G. Wells. Somebody played Hitler. And somebody played Ulysses S. Grant. So, yeah. So it just aired from September 97 to July 98. 9 episodes. Due to low ratings and poor advertising, the series was cut short after less than a season. Let's see what Mark Verhinden said about it. In 2020 hindsight, I wish the show had been darker and grittier, both in terms of storytelling and stylistically, but we were trying to deliver an APM show that meant doing something suitable for children, so gritty wasn't going to happen. So we were getting our sea leg story lives with our last episode, which is a sweet story about Don Stark's blah, blah, blah. We were canceled as that episode was wrapping, and that, as they say, was that. Yeah, so they got 2 movies out of it and a short-lived TV series.
That could be something I could see them rebooting, but they don't make that type of movie anymore. So,
well, in 2014, they were considering doing a reboot because Looper was a big hit, but nothing's happened.
They don't make that action style movie anymore. It's either like Fast and the Furious, Transformers, or like nothing.
Or a superhero movie.
Yeah, or like straight to video, Steven Seagal.
Oh my god! Just stop, Steven Seagal. Stop.
He's making them like crazy.
I've watched some pretty good like Netflix action movies lately. Like Triple Threat's good.
Really?
I mean, how could it not be? It's got 3 really good martial artists. I think it's got Tiger Chen, Tony Jaa, and the guy who is the main guy in the Raid movies. Like, it's not like an amazing plot or anything, but it is really good. But yeah, I'd like to get around to seeing the at least the first episode of the show of 12 Monkeys, just to see kind of where they go with it, what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm going to check out that French short as well, because I'm just want to watch more of this type of stuff right now. I've been so burned out lately that I'm kind of like in a mood, so I'm gonna embrace it.
Yeah, I'd like to watch some more high concept stuff. High concept.
I might check out Brazil sometime soon too.
I love Brazil.
That's probably on that Criterion channel.
Yeah, it must be. I own the Criterion edition of that. Oh, yeah, huge fan of Brazil. It's like, if it's not top 10 for me, it's definitely top 20. It's way up there.
Once I get above like a few, it's hard for me to do numbers at that point. Like, I don't know.
I think most people are. I've always had a very regimented mind. I'm always about ranking things. You know, right at the start of this episode, I was like, "This is my third favorite of 95." You know, like my brain just works that way. I need to rank things. I need to compare things. So I've got even. I mean, I do that on purpose. I also do it automatically too. So
Yeah.
And I mean, the other thing about that though is like over time, you know, that can change. Sometimes something goes higher. Sometimes things drop lower. That happened with me.
Yeah, it's like that. What is that book? 1,000 Movies to See Before You Die, or something like that.
1001, isn't it?
1,001. Yeah. So he, as time goes on, he has to, knock some off and add some.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's quite a list to have to go and start knocking things off.
Oh, there's a 2007 film, a Mexican film called Year of the Nail, which is also told entirely through still photographs because it was inspired by Leggete. The film was included in 1001 movies before you must see before you die. This film's on that list, Leggete.
Oh, okay, cool.
Or at least it was on one of those versions of it. Yeah, I've read about it before, and I've read about the director, Chris Marker, which isn't a very French-sounding name.
I know. I thought the same thing.
But I've heard of Sans Soleil, which means without sun, which is a movie from '83, which was supposed to be a really good sort of. I think it's a documentary, but it's also not. I don't know. Not sure. It's hard to understand from what I've read about it, but it is a documentary. It just has like a weird thing to it. Anyway, sounds interesting. Just like for the sake of this show, we should probably do a couple. I mean, we already did a French series, and I'm saying do another French series, but do some French New Wave at some point. Not necessarily in a series, but just
sure.
What sucks is I don't have one of the more straightforward ones of that anymore. Is I don't have Le Samurai, which is one of the very first ones we talked about when we put the show together. Like at one point, I did have that, and I don't know if I had to delete it to make room. But anyway, I thought, okay, it'll show up again, and I've still never seen it, like coming back, because TCM does show stuff like that. Like that's how I saw other stuff like in that. That's how I saw the 100 Belows. That's how I saw. I know. There's one I still have from that, which is Breathless. I still have Breathless, which would be good to do.
Mm-hmm. We've had that one on the list for a while.
Yeah, I'd even like to do. It's been a while since we did one of those ones where we do like the original and the remake. Like I wouldn't mind doing that. Although if I could ever find the remake, the '83 one, the American remake with Richard Gere, which I think is a pretty solid remake. Yeah, there were a few there that I know we wanted to do like 2 back-to-back. That's one of them. Another one wasn't a remake thing; it was a different situation. But anyway.
Yeah, the problem is usually the remake is garbage. That's why we haven't done it very much.
Right, because usually it's just like, okay, now we just talk about how the remake is inferior.
Right. We've had a few exceptions to that rule, but that's generally how it is. Like when the with Night Watch, the same director came back and directed, an American version of the film.
Yeah, we did that with Night Watch, and we did that with Insomnia.
Yeah, that's right. I knew we did another one.
And we didn't do it purposely with The Vanishing, although we did talk about how like that might be the ultimate example of like a remake, like totally like getting everything wrong about the original.
Because it changed all the stuff that we liked about the original.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't Jeff Bridges in that?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about too.
I wouldn't mind. I don't like it, but I wouldn't mind watching it again just to refresh my memory of it.
I don't know that I've seen the whole thing. I know I've seen parts of it.
years ago, and I mean, this must be like more than 15 years ago, I guess, but I seem to remember there was a time where it came on TV fairly often, but maybe I'm just misremembering that, or maybe it's just I saw it on TV once. Speaking of which, getting back to 12 Monkeys, that's how so at some point in the late 90s, I kept seeing like parts of this movie. Like I didn't hear about this movie in theaters or anything, even though it was a big success and had Bruce Willis. I didn't hear about it, but I found it on TV and was really into it and fascinated. But it was several years before I actually got to like see like a full version, like a DVD or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some fairly early memories of the movie, but it's only parts because I didn't see it start to finish for quite a few years. But I liked it right away, even when I was like a kid. Because I would have been like, I don't know, probably like 13 or 14 by the time I saw this movie the first time. I even really liked it then. It really fascinated me. I remember remembering different parts about it. Like most of it was like the asylum stuff was really the stuff I remembered.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Willis all curled up on the bed with Brad Pitt yelling at him, and he catches a spider and eats it. And right after he eats the spider, he says, "I'm not crazy," which is pretty funny.
Right. Well, that's like the first thing crazy people say, isn't it? Is I'm not crazy. Like that's okay. Yeah. All right, buddy. That's what everybody says. Or like you're in prison. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
No, I was actually on board. From day one with this film. Saw it in the theater and bought it on VHS soon after. And yeah. Like I told you, I actually had the standee from the VHS rental store. I think maybe the only one I ever actually got. There's lots of ones that I wanted, but it was like first come, first serve type thing. And I managed to get my name in first, and I got the standee that was in my room for quite a few years. It's just like Bruce Willis's head on a black background. It's not really a whole lot to it, really, but.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like really good artwork or anything. It's kind of bland. But
I can remember when people saw that poster, I think some people got the wrong impression. They thought like Bruce Willis was like a cyborg or something.
Yeah.
Like he had a red glowing eye or something. It's like it's some sort of Terminator ripoff. No.
It's what it. Yeah, sure. I can see why people would think that.
Gilliam was also given final cut for this movie, which is probably another reason why it turned out so well. Because nobody like messed with it after he did it.
Even though he did want to cast Nick Nolte and Jeff Bridges.
I mean, I guess Nick Nolte has a time and place, but.
See, they said it. The test screenings didn't go very well. I don't know, did they not change anything? Yeah, the first cut of the film didn't go well in test screenings, so they were discussed making major changes to the movie. However, producer Charles Roven and director Terry Gilliam, they left it alone. So that tells you test screenings are bullshit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I really think studios put way too much stock into that stuff because I mean, how many times have we heard the original was so much longer and had all this other stuff, but it didn't play well at test screenings.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, do these people even know what the fuck they're talking about? Or you just got people off the street. It's not like you got, cinephiles who know what's going on. There wasn't enough explosions.
Yeah. Being as cinephiles, the movie itself makes allusions to various classic movies. Most notably, they go to the theater during like a Hitchcock festival. Mm-hmm. So at one point they're watching Vertigo together.
Okay, yeah, I think The Birds was going at one point too.
Yeah, when he falls asleep, then when he wakes up, The Birds is playing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, lots of nods to Hitchcock.
And then she puts on the blonde wig, which kind of is kind of like an allusion to Kim Novak from the one I said. My memory is broken. Vertigo. There you go. Yeah, it's a Hitchcock marathon, but it's the same way that Kim Novak's character transforms herself into a blonde in that movie. Even some of the score can be heard. I don't remember that.
Oh, we haven't talked about the score yet.
Well, it has that very notable theme song, of course, which everybody remembers, which I think is a really good theme song because it really seems to make you think of madness, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's very jarring. It's almost like twisted carnival music or circus music,
Yeah,
but it's just off. It's something off about it.
yeah. It's based on Argentine tango. Which is a thing. And of course, getting back to the movies and also the motif, one of the movies that they see in the insane asylum is the Marx Brothers film Monkey Business. So,
Oh, really?
some more monkey for you. And
Yeah,
of course, and there's always a. I've talked about this before, but every time you have a movie where people are like having to stay at not a hotel but a motel, it's like a rule that they have to have like some like cartoon from like the 40s, 50s, or 60s on. They never watch anything modern or contemporary. It's always an old style cartoon. Not golden age, probably not 40s, but 50s or 60s, the limited animation phase. And in this one, they're watching a Woody Woodpecker cartoon that actually has some sort of monkey illusion to it, too, I think. What is it? Oh, no, it's called Time Tunnel, which I guess has something to do, the time travel plot.
There's been some theories that some form of a monkey is either talked about or shown like 12 times.
Oh, yeah, probably.
In the film.
Because like I said, there's several references. There's the monkey down the well.
Monkey business.
Monkey business. There's just some talking about like testing on monkeys, animal testing.
Yeah, isn't there a scene from the Andromeda Strain with the monkey, briefly?
Oh, I don't remember that. That's possible. I just don't remember.
I think that's the film it was from. Let me see if I can find that here. Yeah. Featuring a monkey in the throes of death. The day room in the mental institution.
Oh, yeah. That's probably pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it also has some allusions to noir, especially towards the end with the airport stuff.
Yeah.
And the whole plot of like him and the girl like trying to run away together in disguise. That's kind of, you've seen that in some classic noir movies too.
The whole thing about I keep forgetting the character's name, but the guy that shows up and gives him the gun at the end, his friend or whatever. Yeah, because like why didn't he just shoot the guy? So it is a total setup. They just want him to get killed.
Yeah, as he said, like they definitely want to punish him.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. But the other thing is, like, you can argue is, like, he's seen his future already. It's like it's inescapable, All along, he's had the memory of witnessing his own death. Like, there's no getting away from it. It was going to happen one way or another. Oh, yeah, another reason he gets selected is because he has a very good memory. Makes him a good observer. Because remember, he knows he knows word for word the message that she sent, which is another moment for her when she realizes that maybe they can't escape this, because he's just like, oh my god, the message was from you, for God's sakes. This message to everyone is a joke from you. Because what was the thing? The whole idea was like they had set it up that if you called a certain number and left a message, it would be something they could retrieve in the future and piece together. But the first time he does it, he's in the wrong time. He's in 1990, so they just call some woman's apartment. Which, even though it was contemporary, again, reminded me of Brazil, because it was like very cluttered and loud and noisy. And there's scenes like that in Brazil where people are like all stuffed into like really claustrophobic apartments, and there's a lot of noise and stuff.
That stuff's really off-putting to me too. Like that's why Brazil's a hard watch for me. But
oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I guess it's some OCD or something, but
it's very oppressive.
It's
I mean, it has a super oppressive atmosphere is like the point, right? Like everything's closing in on you.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're lucky that theaters or not theaters or distributors or whoever didn't like do to this what they originally did to Brazil, which was like, give them the happy ending.
Oh, really?
Which they did originally make them do for Brazil, and then they had to, they took off the whole epilogue thing. It was just like the stuff he imagined. Like, no, that's true. They got away and they got married or whatever. Whereas, of course, in the real ending in Brazil, he wakes up and he's just imagined it and he's still being tortured. It's very 1984.
Shit. Oh yeah, I was going to say Brazil's not on the Criterion Channel, but the only Gilliam film on there is the Baron Munchausen. Is that the name of it?
That's a cool one. The first time I saw that, I didn't see that one. I saw there's actually an animated version of it too.
Oh, really?
And I saw that many years ago, like on Family Channel. I had no idea what it was, but I was really fascinated by it. So
is it good? The Gilliam version?
Yeah, it's weird as hell, but it's good.
I've never seen it. It's
like about this weird group of adventurers, and it's kind of got like an around the world in 80 days type feel, but it's really weird. Like the guys have like big ears and big noses, and it's bizarre. It's cool though.
Sarah Polley's in it, so I guess I can add that to my list of her films I've seen.
Good old just been a kid in that.
Yeah. Rather young. She's born in, 78 or so?
Maybe 79.
Yeah, she's pretty close to my age. Well, she would have been like 4 or 5 years old then.
Yeah, what year is that one? I actually don't remember. Was it 85?
I'm sorry, it's 88.
Okay, it's a little later. Yeah, so she'd be maybe 8 or 9.
Looking at it, I thought I was saying 84. No, it's 88.
It's been quite a few years since I've seen it. I just have another quote by Gilliam here since it's on the page. Cole has been thrust from another world into ours, and he's confronted by the confusion we live in, which most people somehow accept as normal. So he appears abnormal. What's happening around him seems random and weird. Is he mad or are we? Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of that in the movie. It's like just the weird. Not only is it what's the word I'm trying to come up with? Disorienting for him, but it's also just super frustrating, right? Like you're in the situation where you need people to take you seriously, but you're in a fucking mental institution, and it doesn't matter how coherent and calm he's trying to explain to these people that he's from the future. Just the fact that he's saying that, it writes them off as nuts, and how frustrating that is.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff he says is like the exact stuff that, people in those institutions say. They talking to me through my tooth, and, I'm sent from the future. This is not the future.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I really like the dialogue there, especially Brad Pitt's, because I think it's pretty realistic for those sorts of people.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many movies where they want somebody to be like crazy, and it's more cartoony crazy. It's not like, I know crazy is crazy and whatever, and if you're going to use that word and not say mentally ill or schizophrenic or whatever, it gives you a blank check to make them say whatever. But you know what I mean. And yeah, I think Brad Pitt's all his dialogue is really good. It really sells that sort of schizophrenia.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw in the trivia that Gilliam was kind of worried about Brad Pitt being able to pull off that dialogue. He even had him work with a dialect coach.
Yeah, understandable.
Sure, but I mean, he does a great job. I mean,
he does. Yeah, he's
fantastic.
Really good delivery. Really good at ranting, as it turns out.
Yeah.
There are some possible hints that, if you wanted, I mean, I don't think either of us believes this, but again, just sort of the sake of interpretation, there are some small hints that can make things look like it's all in his head. For instance, there isn't any explanation of the voice he hears. There's an explanation when he sees the guy, but sometimes he just hears the voice, right? Without seeing the guy. So there's that. And as I said, there's a lot of similarities between the prison in the future or present or whatever, and the hospital. There's a lot of things that are similar. You've got the way the guards are, and the panels of the doctors from each timeline have a lot of similarities to them. So you could say like he's got like a cracked mind that's just splintered, and he's seeing the same thing as two different things. So there's that too. And as I said before, the lack of detail for some of the stuff about this future world too. Like there's not really an explanation for how they managed to build this intricate underground society and how they're actually able to make a time machine, even though there's no apparent source of food or water or breathable air. Because the whole thing is the virus is so bad, you can't even go up on the surface normal, like exposed. You have to be in like a protective suit. So it's just like, so how are they getting good breathable air down there? It's never explained. And I said that's fine, but another thing it could do is like, well, lead some credibility to the idea that like, well, it's not real anyway. So there are a few little hints there that you could take that way if you felt like it. There's another sort of weird reference to, I think it's a reference to Die Hard, where they talk about like escaping through the air ducts. Although he doesn't actually do it. But that's what they think maybe he did, because remember he just vanishes from the locked room because he gets sucked back in time. Again, it's never. They show him leaving the future to go to the past, but whenever he leaves the past back to the future, it's never shown. It's just he just disappears.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to him in the room. It happens to him when he's in the woods with Rowley, when the cops are closing in. He just conveniently disappears at the right times.
Right. Right. Yeah, so they just like pull him back somehow?
Yeah. I was wondering, they never actually say it, but it almost seems like he can only stay there for a certain amount of time before he just gets yanked back, but I don't know. There must be something, again, that must not be the case, because he believes he can actually escape them and live in that time. Although, again, maybe he doesn't know everything. Maybe, as we said, the movie doesn't necessarily explain the rules, but that doesn't mean there aren't rules. Maybe there are rules that we're not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so random and weird when he just shows up like somewhere like on the Western Front in World War I. It's like, okay, now he's shifting continents too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You're talking about something that's all theoretical. Maybe it is possible,
Yeah.
You could shift time. Why not space?
Yeah, I'm just always annoyed by like other movies and shows and stuff that do it that don't take the time to like say that. They just talk about like how it's a time machine. They never say anything about how it can travel anywhere. They just say time machine, and yet you step into it, you step out of it, and you're in a different place too. Like that's not explained. I know it's just being nitpicky, I guess.
Have you seen the original Time Machine?
Yeah,
that's
the one from the 1960 one.
It's a really good one.
The remake of that is bad, but I still kind of like it.
Yeah, I do too.
I think
Jeremy Irons.
Well, it's because I'm a big fan of Guy Pearce.
Mm-hmm.
He's the main guy in that. That movie's actually directed by H.G. Wells' like grandson or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not a good film, but there's good stuff in there, I think.
Well, the library stuff is really good, right? Like that program in the library.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the black guy in the suit that talks to you and gives you answers like that. I like the idea that he survived all that way into like the apocalyptic future. He's still there, and being what he is, he remembers everything. It's just like, oh yes, I remember you.
Orlando Jones.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I know him.
I was going to say Bloom. No.
Yeah, I'd remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they got the Morlocks right too. But yeah, it's.
Well, they actually expand on the Morlocks a little, which is kind of cool. Because in the original story, the Morlocks are just sort of there and they chase you around, but nothing's really done with them, and there's no. Yeah. Like the idea that there's this crazy Morlock leader with a crazy plan is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the movie doesn't completely come together, but it has some cool stuff to it.
Who knows? It may have been some sort of meddling from the studio or something. It may have been some of the things that, he's got to be more likable or, some stupid shit.
The biggest problem with time travel in most like shows and movies and stuff is that no matter how hard they try to like be serious about it, they always treat time travel like it's not time travel. They always treat it like it's just going to another place. Because you'll have like, okay, so you'll have the present and you'll have your team of characters. And one of the characters, maybe on purpose or not, we'll say goes back in time. We'll say they go to the past. They go back. They go to medieval times. We'll make it kind of like timeline, right? So now they're in medieval times, and the whole problem is they don't have a way of getting back. So now the people in the present know that this happened. We have to get him back somehow, and maybe they'll send people after him, and that's all fine. But here's where it gets problematic. So now you have some of the people on the team in the present and some of the people on the team in the past. And here's the problem. Stuff is happening in the past timeline, and they're trying their best to get back into the present timeline, right? Mm-hmm. But they keep going back and forth between them like they're locations. And like their own time runs concurrently. Because it's like, he's been gone for 6 hours. He has to get, in another 10 hours. Like, that doesn't make any sense. He could come, theoretically, he could come back before you ever sent him.
Right.
But they always make it, the time always runs concurrently. Because they'll often do that. They'll do a meanwhile. They'll go, okay, we've got our characters here, but meanwhile, here's what's going on at the same time. But it's not the same time. It's hundreds of years later or thousands of years later. But they always treat it like, so it's more like, it's more like they just went to a place and not a time. And they do that all the time in movies, whether they went to the future or whatever. Always the two groups, it's always like time is still the same for them running. It's like, oh, he's been gone for 5 hours. So it's like, if he's there for 5 hours in the past, it's been 5 hours for us, which makes no sense. Because it's centuries ago. And that's how they'll do it too, because it's like, okay, we have to get back to the pad and blah, 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 and get on the time stream thing, and then they'll flip back, and they'll come back, and it'll be that meant. And however long they spent in the past is also how long they've been gone from the present timeline, which there's no reason for, except for pacing of like telling a story. But yeah, so they always treat it more like it's more like they went to a place and not a time, because they still have concurrent running time. Sometimes they'll even have watches that show this. Anyway, it's not a huge deal, but it always bothered me because I'm just like, if time travel was real, that wouldn't really be an issue, would it? They could just come back to a different time. They don't have to come back to, anyway. I'm just tripping over my words now. But
I agree with you. It's
you're so unimaginable.
It would be different if it was something more tangible, but it's something that's so, who even knows if it's possible,
Yeah.
It's something that, humans are, desiring to do.
So it seems like it's possible, but it doesn't seem like it's possible for humans. It seems like things like energy or something could do it, but like not people. Like when they talk, like space-time is a thing. Like that's an actual thing. And it talks about how, the rules of time change out in space when, certain speeds are achieved and stuff like that. Like, so it seems to suggest that hypothetically, like an object could maybe travel through time, but the idea of a human living through it or actually being able to harness it and decide what time they're going to, that all seems completely out of reach, but who knows, as we said. I'm not going to pretend it's my area because it's not.
Well, like, in Event Horizon, the whole thing is, it's like a point. There's 2 points that you can travel to in time, and then when you on a piece of paper, when you fold the paper.
Yeah, this whole thing about folding space time, right? Yeah, and that's how you like make a shortcut.
Which seems theoretically possible, but how do you do that?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like different dimensions. How do you transfer to a different dimension? Same space we live in, just a different dimension.
Yeah. They talk about we live in 3 dimensions, but there could be like 11, 12, I don't know. I've read some novels that talk about that sort of stuff, and I'm not going to pretend that a lot of it isn't over my head, because it is.
But yeah, if you want to watch the film or the short film, the script was based on. You can check that out on our Twitter page for the movie discussion Pocket Dimension.
Oh, cool.
That is at the MDPD.
Ah, right, yeah. Oh, another thing they bring up and that Rowley talks about is the whole Cassandra truth, the idea of the myth of Cassandra, right? Like being able to know something about the future, but not being able to stop it because nobody believes you, which is, of course, exactly what Cole goes through.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's a whole thing where she mentions that there was some doomsayer in the Middle Ages that talked about how the world would be destroyed by a virus the same year the lecture's taking place, which seems to imply the idea that there was another time traveler that just overshot. Because yeah, she talks about that, how like somebody in the Middle Ages had a prophecy about a virus happening in 1996, which of course is what happens.
they all laughed. All the people in the room
Yeah,
laughed.
they all had a good chuckle.
We're not gonna die.
Okay, I guess his name is Jose.
Jose, yeah.
Yeah, it's the guy. So yeah, first he just seems to give him some exposition and talking about forced volunteering. Next thing you know, he's on the World War I battlefield, and then finally he's the one that shows up as that forces Cole into a suicide mission. Yeah, so that's Jose. Technically, this movie, I just found invokes a trope known as the contagious Cassandra truth, which is the idea of like eventually getting somebody to believe you, but then they have the same problem that you have. And it's kind of an interesting example in that she doesn't believe him when he says he's from the future, but then, he disappears. She starts finding evidence that corroborates it. And by the time he comes back, she suddenly has difficulty convincing him of the truth because he's started to accept her explanation that he's delusional. So they kind of flip roles for there. Once she finally starts believing the truth, he doesn't want to believe it anymore, and she has to like snap him out of it.
Mm-hmm. Almost like a shared psychosis. Like now, she's sharing his delusions.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just reading about the Cassandra complex. I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah. Cassandra's another one of the tragic figures of Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
She was a priestess. She was cursed so that she would be given prophecies that were true, but no one would ever believe her. There's some stuff about her, like she's in some of the Greek tragic plays, notably Agamemnon. People don't remember Agamemnon. He's the king in Greece that gets really mad and goes after Troy after Helen is stolen from him.
Mm.
I think in Scream 2, you get to see. I think speaking of Sydney again, I think Sydney's playing Cassandra in a version of that.
Really?
I think that's. Yeah, I don't know if that's Clytemnestra or if that's Agamemnon, because there's a few different ones. I used to study Greek tragedies, so I used to know them better. Now I kind of get them mixed up in my head. They kind of blend together.
Yeah, I took 3 years of Greek in high school, so
I don't know the language. I don't know any of the language, but I know I know some of the old Greek literature.
I took ancient Greek, so even if I did know the language well, I couldn't speak to anybody.
Yeah. So I studied literature that would have been written in ancient Greek, but didn't read it. Like Homer's stuff.
Hindsight, I should have done Latin. That would have more of a practical application, but
yeah, Latin's really useful. I never studied Latin, but I know quite a bit.
Like Jeopardy, people that know Latin really well are really good at Jeopardy because they can put all the stuff together.
Yeah, pretty much anytime there's like a category about language, having a Latin background helps immensely.
I mean, it helps in all kinds of things, like animal classifications, drugs, medicine.
Yeah. So many scientific names are derived from Latin, right?
Mm-hmm. So you just hear part of it, you don't know what it is, but it means like dog or whatever. So you can kind of put it together in your head.
Yeah, through context, you can get a lot.
There's people that are really smart that can do that kind of stuff, they all know Latin. All those, Ken Jennings and the big Jeopardy winners over the years.
Yeah.
But I don't always do things properly. I fuck up a lot, so that's another example of. And then I took Spanish.
I've got quite a few regrets about some of the decisions I made with my courses, but I did learn things.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of cool stuff that I probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. So I guess that's a good takeaway. I'm trying to find the play that's in Scream 2, and I can't find it.
It's one of those Greek tragedies because it's got like the chorus and everything. That's who Ghostface is blending in with when the chorus, they're all masked and talking to her. And
You're right. It is Cassandra.
Yeah, I thought so. So is that Agamemnon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because the whole thing was she basically told Agamemnon what a terrible idea it was. Go ahead and attack Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Even though
So the Trojan War ensues.
Yeah, because nobody listens to her. There's a few different versions. There's a version too where Cassandra tries to warn the Trojans that the Greeks are hiding in the horse, and they disbelieve her. But that's not in the actual main story. The Iliad. That's not in the Iliad. But there's some plays and stuff that have a version where she tries to warn the Trojans about the horse trick, and they don't listen to her.
Oh,
that's the big thing, right? Is that she knows what's going to happen, but nobody listens to her.
That is a curse.
Yeah. In one version, she gets raped by Ajax, who was one of the Greek champions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a badass.
Yeah, he's probably the best Greek after Achilles, as far as fighting.
Just don't cut that heel.
Yeah.
That tendon.
I like the Troy movie. Speaking of Brad Pitt playing Achilles.
Really? Wow, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. I haven't seen it.
It's worth a watch, but I have one big problem with it, though. So, I'm not going to say, it's not enough like the Iliad, because, I mean, it's like, of all the things where I get mad about adaptations making changes, this is the adaptation of, a 1,500-year-old epic Greek poem. So I'm not saying, it has to be exactly word for word. No, but my big problem with the movie is that it goes out of its way to say there are no gods. Like in the actual Iliad, the gods, of course, exist, and not only do they exist, but they take part. They're like all over the place doing this stuff. This movie goes out of its way to say there aren't any gods. They have nothing to do with anything. And they even do some weird stuff to change the myth around. Because one of the things they change about Achilles' character is they make it like he's one of the ones that doesn't believe in the gods, which is not true at all from the original. But they have this whole thing where everybody's talking about like the gods, and Achilles keeps going around going, there aren't any fucking gods, even though his mother is obviously some sort of weird goddess that they even show in the movie. The other thing is, of course, everybody knows, like we said, Achilles dies because of he's got the one weakness on his heel, right? In the movie, they felt the need to like fix and explain that too, in that they have him like winning fights and stuff, but he gets to a point where Paris shoots an arrow that hits him in the heel, and it hampers him enough so that he gets like hit with more arrows and dies. But like it's not like, you know, so like that's why people thought it was his heel. The heel was just the start of it. Then he gets anyway. It's still a pretty good movie.
I may have seen some of it. I remember pieces, but I don't know.
I thought it's a pretty long movie, but
there were a few of those made right around the period of time. Like didn't Ridley Scott make one, and like Gods and Kings or something? Exodus, Gods and Kings.
He did, but that was quite a few years later. Actually, speaking of Ridley Scott, you know, a movie I'd like to do on here of his in the kind of that vein is Kingdom of Heaven. I'd like to do that movie.
I've seen it.
That's the one about like Crusaders.
Yeah.
Fighting in the Holy Land.
It's been a long time. I saw it like right when it came out, but yeah.
There's a lot I like about that. Well, yeah, I can say a lot about that movie because I think historically it gets a lot of stuff right, and then the ending kind of ruins things. But anyway, but I still really like the movie because it's one of the few movies that's actually somewhat accurate about like the time period, like how like their equipment and how they fought and stuff.
And then didn't Oliver Stone make one? Like Alexander the Great or something?
Yes, it was terrible. I mean, I don't like Oliver Stone anyway, but my God, it's awful.
I haven't seen it, but I know they released another version because apparently he was like extremely gay in the original version, and people didn't like that, so they like released another cut.
I mean, that's the other thing. That's the one thing I'll give it over Troy, because the other thing with Troy is they couldn't have the real Achilles showing like who he really was. Okay, so I don't know how people remember. I don't even know if we're talking about this, but there's this whole thing where Achilles has a boyfriend, and his name is Patroclus. Achilles isn't gay; he's fluid, right? He fucks women and girls and stuff. but the one he cares the most about is his boyfriend Patroclus. Like the others he'll fuck, but the one he loves is Patroclus, right? So there's this part in the Iliad where Achilles is sulking and won't fight and is in his tent, and the Greeks keep attacking Troy and they keep losing battles because they don't have their greatest warrior, and nothing they say works. Achilles is in his tent and he's like, fuck off. At one point, Patroclus, because he's younger and wants glory and be cool, he goes out and leads them wearing Achilles' armor, so that when they attack the Trojans think that is Achilles, and they're kind of scared of him. But at one point, the best Trojan warrior, Horus, goes one-on-one to fight him, and he kills him. And then he finds out very quickly, oh, I didn't kill Achilles, I killed some kid. And then when they come back and tell Achilles that his boyfriend got killed, he goes on a roaring rampage of revenge and decimates them. And it also ends with a one-on-one fight with Horus, where not only does he kill Horus, but then he drags his body around with the chariot and refuses to give his body to them to bury. Anyway, that stuff does happen in the movie, except they make it that he's not his boyfriend, of course, and that he's his cousin. So they do that. Whereas in the movie Alexander, they actually don't shy away from it. They point out that Alexander, again, was not necessarily gay. He fucked lots of people and stuff, but the one he liked the best was this guy he grew up with, Hephaestus, and that's Jared Leto in the movie. And in that movie, they make it clear that that they're together and that like he likes him best. But it doesn't save the movie. The movie's crap. For a movie that's about one of the greatest military tacticians in all of history, it only has like 2 battle scenes. They're immensely spread out from each other, and they're horribly done. Like you have no idea what's going on. It's just a bunch of shaky can nonsense with a bunch of people. Like it doesn't show his. You would think if you're going to make a movie about Alexander, you would show like his tactical ability, how he outmaneuvered and outflanked his enemy. No, it's just a bunch of fucking chaos about them all running into each other. It's awful. And it's long. No, it's not even worth watching. Do not watch it is what I would say.
Yeah, I was looking. There's a director's cut that has 40 minutes added.
Ugh. Why?
Yeah, apparently, like people can't accept the fact that things were different at one time because, I mean, for people that aren't aware, like it was very common for men to have sex with other men.
That was a huge part of Greek culture in those days.
It was how young men were prepped, like for when
Yeah,
to go out and get find a woman, get married.
yeah, they would have like an older guy who was like their mentor and teach them stuff, but they'd have sex too. And I'm probably not all of them were really into it, but some were. But anyway, yeah. So the other really weird thing about that movie, and it's just again, it has to do with the timing of it. It came out in 2004. Was like they cast Angelina Jolie in that as his mother. Angelina Jolie is like 2 years older than him. What's his name? Colin Farrell, and she played his mom. And then, of course, they have fun scenes that like look really borderline incestuous, which is kind of cool. The one thing I'll give the movie is that his father, who would have been Philip the Great, or just Philip of Macedonia, I guess, was played by a mostly forgotten actor at the time. Second Batman, Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer's actually very good in that movie, although it's just he only has a few scenes and then he dies. But he's actually pretty good in that movie. But still, I would not recommend the movie. It's just a long headache. Like Troy's not great, but it makes Troy look a fantastic by comparison.
Was it Gladiator that made all these movies come out? Like
I would assume. Gladiator sort of like reignited this passion for like old epics and stuff like that used to be really common like in the 50s and 60s, right?
All the studios are like, we got to make one of those.
I would assume. And like, yeah, and it was what's his name who did Gladiator, wasn't it? It was Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott did Gladiator?
Yeah, so it seems kind of weird that he would just do a similar movie. I mean, not too similar. I mean, comparing ancient Rome to medieval Europe is pretty different, but you know what I mean, sort of a swords and sandals type thing. Seems almost like repeating himself, but I like Kingdom of Heaven a lot more than Gladiator. Gladiator's fine. I don't have any problem with it, but I think it was super overrated at the time. Like it was a big phenomenon, which is fine. But in retrospect, I'm kind of annoyed because it's really what made Russell Crowe this massive star, and I don't think Russell Crowe is a very good actor. I think he has presence and charisma, but he can't really play characters too well. He's just sort of shouts and...
His real talent is singing.
Oh my god. Yeah, thanks for ruining Les Miserables. Like, I love that Les Miserables, and Javert's one of my favorite characters, and I have to listen to him belt out Stars. Like, I love that song, Stars, and he's just, like, so tone-deaf, tunelessly belting out Stars. There, out in the darkness, I feel that I'm running. Oh, my God.
Russell Crowe, in my eyes, is a slightly better Gerard Butler.
And Gerard Butler was in 300.
Gerard Butler is like...
They're all great at, like, having, like, great abs and running around with big swords.
Like, if Gerard Butler's in it, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, he's dropped off. Gerard Butler did this weird thing where all he did was action movies and romantic comedies.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. He's just a really bland and forgettable kind of guy. And speaking of bland and forgettable, you know who is in Troy? Eric Bana. Oh, man. He's actually a pretty good Hector, but...
Yeah, I like Eric Bana.
But I don't dislike him. I just think he's another one of those guys that's really forgettable and easy to mix up with other people because there's nothing really distinctive about him.
He's good in Choppa.
Didn't see it.
You get to hear his real accent in that.
I've heard his real accent.
Do what? Is very, very harsh Australian.
Yeah.
Which, and those guys, I commend it to them to do good American accents.
I wouldn't say he does a very good American accent. At least he didn't at the start. Like in Hulk, he's like in Hulk. It's one of those weird. Like sometimes, usually when you have those guys, like somebody like a Russell Crowe or even Mel Gibson back in the day, the difference would be they'd be doing their American accent and then it would slip for a few words. That's not what Eric Bana did. if you watch Eric Bana in Hulk, it's just him doing like a really fake, unnatural voice throughout the whole thing because it's the only way he can pull off suppressing his accent. Like he sounds like constipated or something. Or
I've tried to block that film out.
I kind of appreciate it more than I used to. I mean, it's still bad in a lot of ways, but I really respect what a weird direction it went in.
I mean, it's Ang Lee, right?
Yeah, and it's artsy like Ang Lee likes to do, which is, and I don't know, in some ways it works, but I mean, the effects are bad. The stuff about all the stuff with his dad is ridiculous, and that's Nick Nolte, by the way.
You love Nick Nolte, so.
Yeah, stupid old Nick Nolte, the dirtiest man in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Nick Nolte's always just covered in a layer of dust and grime.
That's just him in real life, I think.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter what role he plays. Like, can you imagine him as Cole in this movie? Nick Nolte? I mean, I know, and I mean, I get it. 1995, Nick Nolte's a little different from recent Nick Nolte, but still, it's not like he was young in 1995. He weren't.
And like, who would play Madeline Stowe's character, like Lady Gaga or something?
What, you mean if they did it now?
I'm just saying, like, it would be somebody ridiculous. Bjork. It would be Bjork.
Oh, yeah, 1995 was a good year for Bjork.
Yeah, I wish I could do a Nick Nolte impression. Sounds like you're gargling with rocks.
Yeah. Nick Nolte sounds like, I don't know, like Sam Elliott had his vocal cords shredded. Because it has that deep timbre to it, but it's also raspy as fuck.
Yeah, I can't.
The thing about Sam Elliott is it's deep and smooth. I'm Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Ford makes it tough. Or whatever. Dodge Ram, sorry. His
yeah. Oh, is it? No.
At least we got a new generation of people to talk about trucks. Because it was for so long with Sam Elliott, and we always had songs by John Mellencamp.
Oh, God.
But now we've got Will Arnett. Did you know Will Arnett does truck commercials?
Oh, does he?
With his badass Will Arnett voice? It works. I'm Batman.
Yeah, he's the voice of Batman in the Lego movies, right?
Yeah, those are really good.
I haven't seen the second one.
It's okay, but I meant actually the Lego Batman movie. I like it. Of all, it's really good. Because it, you know, I know I'm a big hardcore comic fan, love Batman, but that doesn't mean I can't have a sense of humor about it. And I like to see a jokey Batman movie like that. It's funny, and plus it references everything. It's hilarious. No, it's really good. Plus, I love an all Canadian Batman and Robin, which is pretty cool. You got Will Arnett and Michael Cera.
Oh, Michael Cera's Robin? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I know he gets a bad rap, but
he makes weird experimental movies.
I think that's his. He's doing like the Elijah Wood, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? It's such a hard transition into adult actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a bunch of weird shit.
Anyway, really, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, in that movie, This Is the End, it's whatever, the Seth Rogen people.
Yeah.
But he's in it, but he's like playing himself, and he's just like doing hardcore drugs and fucking hookers and stuff.
Yeah, he's playing. It shows what a good sense of humor he has about himself, because he knows there's a whole, for no reason, because he's actually a pretty nice guy, and there's nothing. I don't think there's anything that bad about him. There's a whole bunch of people that hated him, right?
Yeah.
Thought that whiny, stupid bitch, and he gave them what they wanted, because he's a complete asshole in the movie, and he dies like a complete bitch in the movie too. He's like, guys, you know, like I think that's a pretty. Not a lot of guys would do that. To have, you know, that would fuck with their ego. But he's like, you know what? All the people that hate me, I'll give them what they want. You know, I'll play like a whiny bitch, annoying prick version of myself, and I'll go out like a bitch, and I'll be a coward. You know, I'll give them what they want. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a really funny commercial.
It didn't quite live up to its how good it's set up, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't really care for it, but there's a funny commercial now with Jason Momoa. I can't remember what they're selling, but it's this whole thing about like he's a weak bitch, but like all of his stuff is fake. Like he takes off his muscles are fake. He takes them off, and he's just like this really bony guy. It's like you got to really have a good sense of humor about yourself to be able to do stuff like that. A lot of guys wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to someone's character when they're able to poke fun at themselves. Any speculation that they're not as manly as they are portrayed.
Yeah. Speaking of like Miz and Broadway and stuff, that was remember they had that joke on SNL about Hugh Jackman. They had this thing about Hugh Jackman saying things like, "I'm simultaneously the manliest and gayest guy at the same time," because he plays Wolverine, but he also sings show tunes. Really
I didn't see that. That's funny though.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in anything recently. Still waiting a way to get Wolverine into the MCU.
Yeah.
Although I mean he's an okay Wolverine, but everybody's heard me bitch. I want a faithful Wolverine. He doesn't have to be like a midget, but he has to be small for God's sakes. Wolverine isn't 6 feet tall. He's smaller than me. And I'm saying, in the comics it's a little too much because he's only like 5'3" or something in the comic, which is ridiculously small. But I mean, make him 5'7", 5'8".
They'll never do it. Not in the films.
I mean, I try not to harp too much on things like height, but it really matters in the case of Wolverine. That's why, like, Sabretooth calls him Runt and stuff like that. And they all, like, many characters, including people like Jean Grey, are noticeably taller than Wolverine. Like, that's the point. But anyway, people don't need to hear me harp about that again. At least not for now. I was going to say, we can circle back and finish off, I guess. Always been a big fan of this movie. Very happy to see it again.
Me too, man. I loved it. It's one of those movies that you see stuff, every time you watch it that you hadn't never seen before.
Yeah, there's so much attention to detail in the movie, and there's so many things that like add to the plot, add to the atmosphere, that all tie up so well. And as we said, there's a lot of stuff that leads to some ambiguity, so you don't necessarily have to interpret the film one way. There's other ways to interpret it. I just think everything ties together so well.
It does. Typical Gilliam fashion, such attention to detail and, so, determined to get it exactly right. Even the hamster wheel thing. I didn't notice it in the film, but I read it in the trivia that there's a hamster on a wheel, just a shadow while he's taking his blood, doing the blood sample like early on in the film.
Yeah.
And they had to shoot it like quite a few times to get it right, but just the attention to detail for that, for him is.
And you only see that it's only on screen for like 2 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's, maybe hard to work with the guy that's like that, but the final product usually winds up pretty good.
Yeah. And good performances out of the actors, as I've said to lead off. Like it's a pretty different sort of performance for Bruce Willis. It's not Bruce Willis just being Bruce Willis or John Clane or whatever. He's a more fallible guy, I guess. He's more vulnerable, and as I said, he's plagued by things like self-doubt, which I think really comes through. And Brad Pitt really chews the scenery in the movie, but it doesn't overtake anything because it fits. Because he's a crazy kind of schizophrenic guy, so his rants are really good and on point. I think they don't sound like just made up bullshit. Oh, here's what a crazy person says. Like it sounds more realistic. His rants. It's too bad that we don't get a bit more Christopher Plummer, who, by the way, is also in Troy. So that's another movie. So here's something interesting. So in this movie, Christopher Plummer plays Brad Pitt's father. In Troy, Christopher Plummer plays Priam, King of Troy, whose son Hector is killed by Brad Pitt. And at one point, he comes to him in disguise to try to get the body back. During the war, he comes to him in disguise, saying, "I'm the king and I want my son's body." Anyway, so that's kind of an interesting connection there between the actors.
Oh yeah, Plummer's had a really lucrative career.
I know. He finally got an Oscar like a couple years ago. I think what was he, like the oldest person to ever be a first-time winner? He was like 82 or something.
What was it for?
We should check. He'd been like nominated for Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor like 8 times or something, and never got it. Like, holy hell, he's 90 now. Yeah, and he's so old. He was in some of those historical epics. He was in The Fall of the Roman Empire from 1964. But anyway.
Yeah, he won when he was 82. Wow.
Yeah, 82. What was it for, though?
Oh, no.
Best Supporting Beginners. Yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor. Become the oldest actor to win an acting award. I thought it was just oldest, like, for first time. I've heard Beginners is good. I've never gotten around to it.
I haven't seen it either.
It's kind of like a romantic comedy, but it's more serious. It's got Ewan McGregor's in it. It's supposed to be pretty good. Yeah, but anyway, it's really, really well reviewed anyway. Yeah, Christopher Plummer's awesome. I mean, obviously, I guess he'll always be remembered for The Sound of Music. That might always be his most like iconic role. As Captain Von Trapp. He's done so much stuff, obviously. Oh, he was in Oedipus the King too. Speaking of Greek tragedies, he's done it all. He's played Sherlock Holmes. He was in a Star Trek movie. All over the place. But yeah, speaking of Ridley Scott, he was going to be in All the Money in the World, and then Kevin Spacey got it, and then of course Kevin Spacey had his thing, and they kicked him out and brought Christopher Plummer in to finish it. And I mean, this has nothing to do with the type of person or whatever problems Kevin Spacey has, but it just makes more sense to me. Christopher Plummer makes more sense in that role. Kevin Spacey doesn't.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But I mean, I'll always like Kevin Spacey as an actor. I mean, I'm not gonna. But yeah, J. Paul Getty, All the Money in the World. That wasn't that great, but it was still worth a watch. Yeah, I think Plummer's got the Order of Canada. Yeah, he does. In fact, he got it quite early on. And he has a few other medals from like the Queen and stuff. Oh, he's won a couple Tonys too.
Really?
He's won 2 Tonys, 2 Emmys, an Academy Award. And he was actually once nominated for a Grammy, which is pretty funny. In the category of Best Recording for Children. Triple Crown of Acting. Let me look that up. The Triple Crown of Acting is a term used in the American entertainment industry to describe actors who have won a competitive Academy Award, Emmy Award, and Tony Award. Okay, so yeah, he's a Triple Crown winner.
Man, how many of those? Who else is on that list? Like Cher, Madonna.
Movies, probably. Al Pacino, Helen Mirren.
Really?
Ingrid Bergman. Jessica Lange, Viola Davis, Maggie Smith,
Really?
Jeremy Irons, Jeffrey Rush, Frances McDormand.
No idea.
Jessica Tandy, Vanessa Redgrave, Ellen Bernstein. Yeah, so that's all of them. So it's a fairly short list. It's probably about 20. So that's pretty elite company. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that, the Triple Crown of Acting. Makes sense, though. There's a thing in hockey called the Triple Gold Club, which is for guys that have won what are considered the most significant awards in hockey, which is the Stanley Cup, a gold, a gold medal at the Olympics and a World Championship gold medal. It was actually the first people to do it would have been like in some Swedes in the early 80s when they finished it by winning the Cup with the Islanders, but it wasn't recognized as an actual thing until the first Canadians got it, which happened in 2002 when Canada won gold at the Olympics. But it's a pretty cool thing. But yeah, Christopher Plummer's awesome. That's all I wanted to say. I was just trying to find a list that has his filmography. Instead, it's split up. Like usually when you have actors like this. Okay, there we go. Christopher Plummer filmography. Yeah, I just want to take a quick look at that before we go. Yeah, he was in Up, so he's in a Pixar. I'm just trying to look at so he's in various historical epics, blah, blah, blah. He was in The Return of the Pink Panther, International Velvet, played Sherlock Holmes in Murder by Decree. Did a voice in American Tail. What else we got here? There's General Chang in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. 12 Monkeys, as we said. Wow, I forgot that he was Van Helsing in Dracula 2000. I forgot about that.
Yikes.
I haven't seen that movie in so long. I still kind of like that movie. It's not like a good movie, but I still enjoy things about it. Oh, he was in the terrible movie Cold Creek Manor. Man, that movie sucks. Oh, man, he was in Alexander. So he was in Troy and Alexander. Wasn't that him in Troy? Have I been wrong? I thought he was Priam in Troy, but I'm not seeing it here. I thought for sure it was him in Troy. I've been wrong all along. All that stuff I said before about the thing with Brad Pitt was wrong. I thought he was Priam in Troy. But he was Aristotle in Alexander. Wait a sec. Who the fuck was it Peter O'Toole? I always get him and Peter O'Toole mixed. I always get him and Peter O'Toole mixed up. Let's see if it was Peter O'Toole, who was quite a bit older. Come on, who was Priam? Priam. Yeah, it was Peter O'Toole. Sorry about that, folks. It is. So, yeah. Unfortunately, Peter O'Toole's in the good one, or at least the better one in Troy. It is Christopher Plummer in Alexander. He's only early in the movie as Aristotle. For the people who know, Aristotle was a personal teacher of Alexander. But I don't even remember his scenes because it's been so long since I've seen the movie, and I have no desire to ever see it again. So, sorry about that. I had him confused with Peter O'Toole. I get him mixed up with Peter O'Toole a lot, even though I know Peter O'Toole is a bit older. So whoops-a-diddle. I was trying to remember. Peter O'Toole was Lawrence of Arabia, and Christopher Plummer was Captain Von Trapp. Peter O'Toole, of course, passed away in 2013. Anyway, let's wrap up before I make more errors that I have to correct. So yes, we're both big fans of Terry Gilliam. I know, and this is your favorite Terry Gilliam, 12 Monkeys. One of my favorite movies of the 90s, one of my favorite movies with Bruce Willis. Gives Bruce Willis a nice chance to show some versatility and do something a little different than he's kind of known for, because Bruce Willis is a pretty good actor. What do we say? A memorable theme. Well, we always like stuff about time travel. This movie's interesting because it has its own sort of rules and stuff, but some of the stuff it doesn't really get technical, and it doesn't really explain. It's just like, okay, here it is, which I kind of like in some time travel movies. It works in this one. I kind of like how some stuff is not really explained and some stuff is kind of disorganized and whatever in this movie. Brad Pitt's really cool in it.
Yeah.
But as you said, like a director, like somebody like stop saying like Ridley Scott. Once again, we have a director who's really detail oriented, especially about things like the visual aesthetic and crafting the scenes and Yeah, so it's a rare movie that he didn't write the script for or even contribute to the script for, but he really liked the script. Good script work by that guy who I named before. Oh, what's his name? Peoples. David Peoples?
That sounds right.
David Peoples, yeah, who, again, had worked on the very good script for Blade Runner and some other good scripts. So, yeah. Well written.
Yeah.
Sort of a different look at sort of the dystopian future type trope, because it's not just about sending the lone hero back to fix everything. Instead, he's just sort of one of many observers or scouts that's sent back, and then you have all that stuff about predestination and stuff about how he kind of gets caught in a loop of his own creation. And the movie has a somewhat open ending. It's like, okay, maybe they're going to be able to his actions have, even though he dies, he might have still been able to help them save the future a bit, although maybe they can't avert the virus being released. But you don't know. We don't know what that woman's going to do when she says she's insurance. For all we know, she's going to kill him right there on the plane. Why not? If they can just yank her back in time, why not do it?
Right.
But again, we don't really know what the rules are or how it works, so we're not sure what they're going to do. But as we said, it's one of the best movies when it comes to having like a cool like red herring that really throws you off. Because throughout the most of the movie, you just believe what they believe. It's just this virus was released by some sort of group called the Army of the 12 Monkeys. And when you meet Brad Pitt and find out he's involved, it doesn't make you doubt it. You're like, okay, he's nuts. Yeah, maybe if it was an accident, they still wound up unleashing hell. Even if they didn't mean to, maybe they only wanted to teach his dad a lesson and they didn't know what he was doing. But it turns out, no, all they did was play a big prank, releasing a bunch of animals from the zoo and putting his dad in a cage while it was his dad's assistant who went on to be the supervillain stuff. So yeah, we had to throw that one together a bit. As we said, we had a few false starts this week. The week did not come together the way we wanted it to. Unfortunately, sometimes that happens. But hopefully next week will go more smoothly. But still, it's not like this was a throwaway episode. We both really like the movie, and we're glad to be able to get into it a little and talk about it a little, because 12 Monkeys has been one that we've both been fans of pretty much ever since it came out. So yeah, I think that'll wrap up unless you have anything to add.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, awesome. So thanks a lot, guys, for being with us. I know it's a little different because we came in on a Thursday, which isn't our normal day, and we're a bit late. So if anybody was watching tonight, we really appreciate that, because we know it was kind of out of the blue. Hopefully we'll be able to get back on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. I won't make any commitment what next week is, because it's up in the air, and I especially don't want to say that we're going to do this and have it fall through either. So when we're on better footing, maybe we can give a better heads up. I know we couldn't do it this time, but maybe hopefully going to next week, we can at least give a heads up on Twitter a day or two in advance if we can. We will try our best with that. So that'll do for now. So thanks a lot. Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.